Good morning, grand rising, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you at, how you doing? Welcome to Deconstructing Christianity. I am your host, Coach Renz. What a day, what a day, what a day. As we move forward, it's Friday. It's Friday, it's Friday. It's the end of the week and the last day. So what you gonna do? So today we're going to be talking about why would a good God create hell? What sense does it make that a good God would have created hell? That hell does even exist? Makes no sense. So we're going to have that conversation today. We're going to give about a few minutes to let people get on before we get into the conversation. While we're waiting on those people, let me get my cigar ready. But also, I want to remind you, we are meeting here in San Antonio, October 31st through November 2nd. Go to the link in the description of the YouTube video or Facebook. Hit the Jury Hotel, get your reservations. And I will be talking about the agenda later on, but this is the agenda on we meet up Friday at Devil's River, right across the street from Voodoo Donuts. This is where we're going to meet up. Our meet and greet for Friday, and then Saturday we're going to have a business and money talk about a poolside at Drury Plaza. Then at 2 o'clock, we're going to go to the Japanese Tea Garden. Then 8 p.m., we're going to meet back at the poolside for a conversation on developing the community of deconstructionists. And at the deconstructing Q&A at the Japanese Tea Garden. Then on Sunday morning, we're going to have a sound bowl meditation. Now, this is everybody, they have free food for breakfast and for supper at the Drury Hotel. So I hope you guys are in attendance. Reserve your space, your room today. I'm not charging for anything. This is all just we meeting together. We just coming together as a group. This is not something that's a conference or anything like that. It might just feel hard. It might be on struggle bus with this cigar. If you don't know the format of the show, this is the format of the show. Right around the 3, 4, 5 minute mark, I get started, go through a little short lecture, and then after the lecture, the doors open. The doors of the church are then open for conversation. Is there a strip club nearby? The only one I know of is probably, it's like, why am I answering that question, Tim? I mean, who asked that question? Tim, no. I passed one of them on the highway. That's the only reason I know where one is at. I've never been inside it. But I don't frequent the strip club there, Tim. So yeah. I'm the worst guy to go to a strip club with. I just hate it. He just made me think about it. I'm the worst guy. I'm the kind of guy that goes into a strip joint with $20 and I come out with 15. I just can't see it. I don't see the no. Can't do it. Can't give up my money like that. Cannot do it. I'm just trying to help some single mother. Tim, I'm not dealing with Tim today on this one. So today we are going to have a discussion about how can a good God, why would a good God create hell? Does this make any sense? But in order to understand that, we got to look a little bit at the history of where our modern day ideas of hell come from in the Abrahamic religions. For the most part, it is the Abrahamic religion that have that, but that influence has created influences over other religions as well that didn't so much have an idea of hell. But now New Age versions of even those religions are starting to kind of lean into the hell concept. But did Judaism, which is the father of Christianity and the grandfather of Islam, did Judaism originate with a hell involved? The answer to that would be no. You see, regardless of what people want to believe, the Old Testament and the New Testament does not speak in one voice. And the Old Testament just within itself does not speak in one voice. The Old Testament is written based on a henotheistic Canaanite people who separated themselves from the Canaanites, who understood and thought in the process of different levels of gods and pantheons and lifestyle. And these gods changed over time. So with the Israel, those who would become the Israelites, who would then later influence the Christian movement and the Islamic movement, they were originally Canaanites who believed in the God Yahweh, whose Yahweh was a storm deity that was of the Canaanite pantheon. So when they separated themselves, most likely somewhere in the 1300s to 1200s BCE, but more than likely in the 1200 BCE time frame. And the rationale for that time frame is because the first time we hear of an Israelite people is in the 1204 Merneptah Stele. So them still being a loose bandit of people, everyone else in the Merneptah Stele is noted as a civilization, as a city, as a nation. These were the only ones that were noted as a group of wandering people, a tribe, a people group. So they had not established themselves as a nation prior to 1200. So it would seem that this is the time frame by which they began that their true exodus, the true exodus of the Israelite people, was simply leaving the vassal state control of the land of Canaan by Egyptians to go into the more mountainous wilderness area. And when I say wilderness, not like a big forest, because there's not a little forestry in Israel, but into the more mountainous areas of Israel going east into the Levant. So this would be their exodus. Now, because they had this separation, when you look at the Canaanite religion and how they practice it and how the Canaanites got their religion from the Akkadians and Sumerians, and in these Canaanite religions, with this large pantheon, there is no such thing as a hell. There is simply the underworld. Everybody went to the underworld. There was no situation of, if you believe in this God, you automatically get to go to heaven. If you follow these commandments, you get to go to heaven. It didn't necessarily work in that way, right? So what you had was the people then just believed that depending upon what God you worship, you get to go to the underworld. And for the most part, most of the people went to went to the underworld to do relatively the same thing that they was doing in their regular life, if they were considered to be someone who was a good person, someone who did things properly. They pretty much just go into their own little part of the underworld where they live a regular life. And now, if they were someone who did bad things, there were different levels of suffering that they may go through. But everybody went to the underworld. This was their thought process. In that religion, you had stories of even the gods going to the underworld, whether it's Tamuzi or Ilnana. Ilnana went to the underworld and she came back, so much as people like to reference that when they're talking about how there are other gods who went to the underworld and came back, in reference to Jesus going to the underworld and coming back. But that was their thought process. And then we have, when they continue through history, of course, this concept was primarily through the ideas of the Sumerian Canaanite mythos, but as they began to be conquered by other peoples, they then started to develop other people's ideas and concepts of the afterlife. So once they were conquered by the Greeks is when we see being conquered by the Persians, we start to see the first changes in this Abrahamic religion, where they start to believe that, okay, there is some type of evil being that fights against our good being. Once they started understanding Ahura Mazda and Agramenian of the Zoroastrian religion from the Persians when they were relieved of their captivity in around 530 BCE, this is when they start to develop a different sense. But prior to that, the mindset was more or less no God was ultimately good, no God was ultimately bad. They were just different gods with different personalities. And you pretty much had to submit yourself to the personality of your city god, your city state god. So this was their mentality. Now, once they got were under the influence of the Persians, then you start to notice, and especially in the text of Daniel and Isaiah and Ezekiel, you started to notice a shift. And that shift starts to be more of the God and a primary adversary. You see, before it was just the God and the serpent. Serpent is not primary adversary. Then it's the God and it's the Satan. The Satan is part of the heavenly council who comes up there and has a job. It's a friendly little, they have a little banter conversation, friendly conversation. There's no warring and fighting, nothing like that. You don't really start getting into the God and his Beelzebubs and stuff until you start getting to Ezekiel and Daniel with their more apocalyptic writing styles. This is developed from the being after coming out of the Babylonians and having reference to the Persians, and they have Agramenia. They had Ahura Mazda as the prime good god, and Agramenia was his polar opposite. This is the devil. So then that mentality starts, because this during this time frame, you got to realize the Old Testament books for the Jewish people, the Tanakh is not closed until much later, until like the first and second century is when it's closed. So there's still midrashes and still conversation. They haven't solidified everything they wanted because the book was still in flux. Now, once they met the Greeks, though, once they came under the control of the Greeks, this is where Christianity really, because Christianity doesn't develop until after the first century, until you start having the Romans, and the Romans pull from the Greeks. This is when the concepts of adding a hell that is filled with pain and suffering, this is when that comes in, because when they was pulling from the Sumerians, you just kind of went in there and just lived a life in the afterlife. The same thing when what they understood with the Egyptians. The overwhelming majority of that part of the Mediterranean, you pass the feather of Maat test, you go into the underworld, and you just kind of live a slightly better life than you lived on Earth. That sucks too, but that was their situation. That was so we're looking at centuries of time of thought. But when they get under the control of the Greeks, and the Greeks' influence starts to take shape, you can then see how it becomes a difference. You see, Hades, the god Hades wasn't evil. He didn't fit the total evil. He was just over the underworld. The underworld in the Greeks was a little bit different. You hear the writings of Paul where he mentions the only words you have mentioned in your Bible or that reference to hell is Sheol, Tartarus, Hades, and some people would throw Gehenna in there. Now, of course, we know Sheol just means the underworld for the Hebrew. That's all it is, the underworld. It doesn't have anything else to do with anything else. Tartarus is a reference to a certain place in Hades. So Hades is the god of the underworld, but Hades is also a reference to the underworld in itself from the Greek perspective. Now, so the underworld is called Hades in its totality, but there is a specific place that Paul mentions, which is called Tartarus, which is in Hades, which is the deep abyss. It is the place of torment for people who had committed heinous crimes, right? So this is where the Titans were sent by Zeus when he conquered them. He sent them to Tartarus. But you also have other places. You have Elysium, which is in Hades, which is in the underworld. And this is the place of paradise. And you're supposed to be beautiful and everything's great. And originally, this was the place where definitely, if you, it was kind of like they had a Valhalla kind of vibe to it as well, right? So if you were somebody who did great in battle, you went to Elysium. It was part of the war cries in many of their battles when like I will see you in Elysium, all that kind of shit. But there were other places. There was the Field of Mornings, and this was an area where if people suffered from heartbreak or other forms of emotional pains in their life, they were in a place where you continue to experience that, which makes no sense to me. uh, but the I can never say it. That's why I had to look it up. The Asphodel Meadows. This was the largest place in the afterlife. This was a place where it was dark, it was glooming, mind numbing, where souls lived unremarkable, meaningless lives. So their perspective, the Greek perspective, is that if you didn't do something special or great with your life, then you just went and lived in this place that is unremarkable, it's not special, and you just walking around kind of like zombie land, right? So as you can see, and with the fact that the letters of Paul, he describes in his apocalyptic writings, the place where people will go who do not believe in this Jesus as Tartarus, is one of the demonstrations that shows that there is that Greek influence. And since it's written in Greek, that would be the places they would use. There was no in the lake of fire. Where do you find the lake of fire? You find the lake of fire in Revelations. Unless you can put it on the screen, like where it's at, I don't think that the lake of fire is mentioned in any other aspect of the New Testament. I don't think it's in there. Matter of fact, let me ask. Let me check real quick. Yep, it is only in Revelations that you will see anything about the lake of fire, right? Where there's this eternal torment. The the Gospels are all talking about, Paul is saying Tartarus. Jesus goes into Gehenna, which is a trash heap on the outside the walls of Jerusalem. Uh, so if that is hell, then I've been to hell and I've come back. Matter of fact, I've been to hell twice then, and I've come back because I've been to Gehenna twice and came back. But it's just a little valley on the outside of the old walls of Jerusalem, and it's where people threw their trash. Is where beg people went. The poorest of people would go and sift through it, just like we have people doing that today. Uh, so that's all it is. That's all Guyana is. Is maybe where there's some. Is that a place where, if you think about any society, even in our societies today, that would be a place where you would tell your kids or people would like, hey man, stay away from that area. That's not a good area to be in, right? Because crime more than likely going on in there. So even when your Jesus character mentioned oh, I'm going to Guyana, you're gonna, it's a reference to a trash heap. But even that reference could be um, looked upon from the Greek understanding of the meadows. I'm not going to try to pronounce that word again, but the meadows, right? The little sad meadows. So you're not going to, so there is no definitive, the only time you get to a definitive lake of fire is only in Revelations. But this is not something that Paul nor anybody else talked about. Paul or Jesus actually talked about, according to what is written in these books. Beck is saying that also in the Old Testament, it's called the Valley of Hinnom. Some kings did baby sacrifices there, right? Gehenna. Yeah. So, where did this concept of hell, really, the concept of hell is a maturing concept that you see that flows from within the Bible. Adam, Eve, Cain, Abel never said anything about hell. Cain was more afraid of dying than he was of going to hell. None of the descendants of Cain, none of the descendants of Seth talked about going to hell. Noah, nothing about any kind of hell, Sheol. It was all just, oh, people might die. You get none of that. It later develops throughout the book before they start talking about Sheol. Then it continues to develop into Tartarus and Gehenna and Hades. And then it ultimately develops in Revelation with everybody, you're going to be thrown into this lake of fire if your name is not found within the book. And all the devil and all his imps are going to be thrown into this lake of fire, and you will burn for all eternity. That is a 2nd century creation. Revelations is not written into the 2nd century. That is a 2nd century creation. Yet people, it is the most powerful hold on the mind of people that keeps them indoctrinated into this religion more so than anything else, is that fear of hell. Hell, this fear, this lake of fire that was written in the 2nd century has been utilized as the most powerful weapon of maintaining supremacy, religious supremacy over people, and keeping people in the mindset of thinking, oh, I got to do what the church say. I got to do what the pastor say. I got to do what the government say. I got to do what my husband say. I got to do what my pastor say. I got to do what my job say. I got to, be obedient to any and all elders and all these other bullshit, these things that keeps you from ever succeeding in being yourself. Hell, the fear of hell is the primary weapon. It's the primary weapon. There are many weapons that are used, but none are as effective or is used as much as fire and brimstone. You go into hell. And what's funny is that the fire and brimstone is like they're trying to add some Sodom to it, some Sodom and Gomorrah. Don't this dude, Great Father, don't. This is not a channel where I'm going to allow you to post these kinds of things. So I'm gonna need you to stop posting those, because otherwise you will get banned. This is not a channel where I'm going to let you come here and start asking if you believe in this God, then you shouldn't have to come onto this channel and plead for money. All right? If your God was real, why are you over here begging for money? If your God is real, you should just get you some manna from heaven. If your God was real, you wouldn't be in this situation. You just have your house, you had your job and everything. You've been taking care of your stuff. You're wrong damn pray for all that. So anyway, back to the subject at hand. But yes, the guilt and the fear that is created by this religion, by this idea of hell. Now let's talk about this on a philosophical basis. So that we understand hell, even though we understand that hell has had its growth into becoming what we understand it today. So my bad. TikTok is over here. Facebook and YouTube is over there. StreamYard, I can't figure out how to make StreamYard where it can stream all three. I can stream another third one, but it's the whatever the little thing is. I keep trying to do it and it don't work in order to stream TikTok and Facebook, so everything's on one camera. Right. So to the philosophical aspect of it, because that's the primary part that today's discussion is about. So riddle me this, Batman. Christians claim, believers claim, Bible believers say that this God is a good God. He is all good. How can an all good God, first, how can an all good God create evil? To be all good means that you would be in a mindset that you're going to create the best situation for your creation. That means you're going to create earth to be in the best situation for the creations that you put on earth. But earth is a fucking death trap. If you think about it, if you really contemplate earth is a death trap like no other. It allows for life. See, at least like Jupiter doesn't allow for our kind of life, so it can have that big red storm that goes around it and be thrashing and doing whatever it wants to do. But it's not trying to have us on it. It's not trying to have the butterflies. It's not trying to have the horses and the whales and none of that kind of stuff. So it can thrash about and have these storms and do all kind of fuckery on Jupiter, right? You can go to Jupiter if you was God and express all your anger. But Earth, and I mean to call it Earth, but Earth, trees, butterflies, dolphins, us. But Earth is filled with more things to kill you and destroy life than to promote life. The fact that Earth, right now, do y'all know that uh, right now, this last few days was the best day for the Pleiades, for meteorites to be flying into our atmosphere. One day a big one gonna fly in. The Pleiades does have some big ass ones. We just always seem to get the little ones. But we celebrate, oh yay. I mean, it is kind of cool though, to be honest, to go out and look at it. But we got asteroids. We fly through asteroid belts and the tails of comets and shits and meteorites are constantly falling on the earth. We got natural disasters every year. It ain't God, but every year, you know, hurricanes gonna come up from Africa, off the west coast of Africa, coming to the Americas and fuck up the Gulf and all that other regions. Sometimes it goes up into North America. Some it rarely goes into South America. You got the whole ring of fire in the Pacific, which got tornadoes and volcanoes. I mean, not tornadoes, got hurricanes and volcanoes. Bangladesh, I know I talked about this the other day, but Bangladesh gets the fuckery of all fuckeries when it comes to natural disasters, right? They get tsunamis, hurricanes, mudslides, and they get tornadoes in that little ass country, right? Hell, Earth, and that's just natural disasters. We ain't even said nothing about the fact that, oh, you get a little mosquito bite. Now your ass got malaria and you die. Or that mosquito passed along some other disease. Or you got some other bacterial disease that's spreading through birds or monkeys or fleas. What fleas almost kill, estimated to kill about 70 to 98% of the population in Europe. And I don't know the numbers. I don't think we have the numbers of what that same plague did in Mongolia and China. But fleas, how you fight fleas, right? So Earth is designed to kill you. If you're a good God, why would you put more shit on this planet to kill your creation than you got to sustain your creation? The overwhelming majority of the planet is not made for human living based on nature, our natural birth. So, and Fred Adams, if you can't keep up, that's your problem. If you don't understand how this all flows. Your good God created a planet If he's so good, why isn't the planet created better suited for us? To continue with this thought, if this God is so good, why would he set up Adam and Eve in the garden for failure? If this God is so good, why would he create evil? If this God is so good, why would he create calamity? If this God is so good, why in the world would he create a situation where there is a hell? You see what I'm saying? Why would he create it? That's the illogical aspect of one of the reasons why we deconstruct from this God. And and his followers are so daft that they can't keep up and understand how you build an argument. First, let me describe how hell came about. Then let me describe how this God is supposed to be good. Now let me show you how this God is really not that good. And then why would a good God create hell? Hell don't is bullshit. Hell doesn't exist, first of all. But it is illogical if this God exists. If this God exists and he is considered to be God and he is the creator of hell, he is the creator of all the calamity on the earth, he is the creator of sin, then this God cannot be a good God. So therefore, the creation of hell is not coming from a good God, but from a petty, vengeful, childish little God. So my question to the believers is, you cannot form a logical uh, argument that your God is all good, because your God cannot be all good. I would agree with Beck, even though I still don't agree with any religion that has a supreme deity. That he said, I do think more indigenous perspective of spirituality coexists with nature. Spirituality coexistence with nature have more truth, and I would agree with that. Coexistence with nature will have more truth than as far as a type of spirituality than a God. Fred said, I don't understand free will. Oh, Fred. Well, the laws of nature are already created prior to human beings coming on the earth, right? So I guess free will is his argument. So riddle me this, Fred. Your Bible states that in the beginning, when this God began to create, the earth was in chaos and he fluttered over the water. So there were some levels of the laws of nature that was already in place. And since it was in chaos, then something had happened. There was bullshit going on for something to be in chaos. So these laws of nature were in place before man came about, for Adam and Eve. Now, even if so let's go even further, get closer to your free will thought process. Adam and Eve are in the garden, according to your story, Genesis 2. Adam and Eve in the garden. God tells Adam, don't eat from the tree, so and so. But then this guy says, I'm going to bring about all the beasts, all the animals from the earth. And he created them right at that moment in the garden. Then he immediately says that the serpent was more cunning than the rest of them. So who created the serpent that was more cunning, that tricked Adam and Eve? So before Adam and Eve even ate from it, this God had already created a serpent who was more cunning. And in knowing that, how this serpent's mentality is, he knew what the serpent would try to do. So where is the free will? If your God created the actual being that was cunning and deceptive, according to your story, where's the free will? When it says that your God said he created evil, what does that have to do with free will? So your argument doesn't stand. That makes your argument doesn't stand, Fred. Sorry, Fred. I know y'all think that y'all got some little, ooh, yeah, free will. and you want to jump around and say this, jump into other places. But no, the story has more holes than Swiss cheese. Indeed, it does. The beasts were created before the garden. Yeah, Genesis 1, yeah. And talking about the Genesis 2, the garden was created first. You got competing stories. So we always got to remember that. That's why it's the Bible is filled with contradictions within itself. Sean said, if God was perfect, why would he need to eat? Why the need to eat? Yeah. If God was perfect, he would not need to eat, nor would he need to rest. I need you to do some spell checking there, bro. The devil has free will, free will in heaven. Okay, the serpent is not the devil, since the serpent was created on the same day that the garden was manifested. So that ain't the devil. There's serpent. I need you to why do I pay attention to people who have demonstrated time and time again that they have not read their own Bible? They got little snapshots. Right. Some do believe that that if there's one creation is just reiterated. But even if, and let's say you give them that one, then it was still, if it was supposed to be a perfect God and this is the perfect word of God, then they are, it should not contradict itself. Right. So like if I was writing a book of my birth, about my birth, I wouldn't it should say the same thing. It can't say different shit. You can't put things in different orders. Especially if you're talking about creating something. Okay, day 1, I saw this. Day 2, I saw that. Day 3, I saw that. Day 4, I saw that. But then when I write it, I'm gonna put, I think I saw what I saw on day 4. I think I saw it on day 2. And you wouldn't have those kinds of mistakes. All right, we're gonna have Beck over on the TikTok come up.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if you were taking guests. I saw the panel, but you got 2 streams going, so I was like, I don't know how that would work.
Yeah, I still take guests. First, I go through about the first like anywhere from 10 minutes to 40 minutes of lecture, depending on the conversation, and then I open it up for guests.
Okay, so the thought that came to mind that I wanted to share is you know how Christians today will create theological dogma and apologetics to harmonize the scripture or their own version of hermeneutics, right?
Right.
Well, from learning and my own pathway of deconstructing and learning about the culture and how they challenge how Jewish people will even, rabbis will challenge their own sacred literature. They don't like they challenge God in the book when they're
yeah.
So, but here's the thing: when I'm looking at the documentary hypothesis and the fact that a lot of these, like you said, it's multivocal, it's not a univocal book.
Right.
So I'm coming in the fact that it's not even though we have Genesis and blah 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 and it was put in this order, these texts didn't come about in that chronological order. So
right, they didn't.
I see scribes or priests creating and writing their own apologetics in their, halakha and pesher all throughout the scripture. No, they said God was like this, but God's really like this, or you heard about this story, but this is actually how it happened. The Babylonians have this creation story. Well, actually, it was our God, and this is how humanity's all related because of Adam and Eve and Noah. And I see this culture's own theology, this culture's own progression of apologetics and theology in their literature.
Yeah, no, you are absolutely. I agree with you 100%, and that is pretty much how the Judaist religion, the Israelite religion, came about. It came about because you have all these stories are written at different time frames. They're not written in the chronological order that we have them in today. For instance, like it is most scholars believe that Job was the first book that was actually written down, and that the creation stories may have varied widely from what they were in the time frame of Hezekiah to how they were finally written down in under the Babylonian captivity. So it's not even, you can't even make the claim that Genesis is the same story that they was talking about in during the reign of Hezekiah, that the creation could have been a totally different creation story. And with different kings and different people writing at different times or with different political reasons, this is why you have a difference in this God, in this Bible, because of the thought processes of each one. Sometimes God is ethereal, other times God is anthropomorphized. He's, you know, like, because like you're saying, sometimes he eats, sometimes he can't be seen.
That's, right. That, and I wonder if that's because, you know, you've got two different traditions, which is, you know, the Elohist, the Yahwist, maybe even priestly sources, depending on, you know. So,
right. And the Deuteronomist.
Yep.
To fill out that whole process. But yeah, and that is part of the reason why. This is why you got the two different stories in Genesis 1 and Genesis 2, because one is written by the Elohist and the other one is written by the priestly. And so they're telling us one, this God is ethereal, the other, this God is corporal. And you get that type of situation because of the different thought processes. And then you have the reformations of the religion, whether it's under Josiah in around 600 BCE, which is when they start to move further away from the Canaanite pantheon. And
yeah, which was the thing I'm so sorry, that's what I was referring to earlier about the Valley of Hinnom. Josiah is related to that, like his Reformation is related to that cultural aspect that they refer to in the New Testament. That Valley of Hinnom, Gehenna, and even Islam has their own concept of hell, and they call it Gehenna.
Right.
So
at least their hell, you're only there for a certain amount of time. Christian hell, you're there forever. But yeah, but and this is why you have the differences when you're talking about hell and the afterworld. I mean, the afterlife. Earlier creations of their afterworld, just an underworld. It's the same as everybody else in the Mediterranean. It's an underworld. There are different conditions within that underworld, but everybody goes to this underworld. But in the Hebrew mindset, originally it's you just go there and there's really no consciousness to it. Only a few important people get to have consciousness.
Have you read it in Jonah, the story of Jonah? Like he actually like that was their concept or the way they envisioned hell.
Right, being in the belly of a fish.
Yep, and if you look at the way, like the ancient way they viewed the they were more like it was flat, right? So they had this concept of a disc, and then the world was on pillars, and then there was like this Leviathan wrapped around the pillars underneath. And that's why in the New Testament, when Jesus was walking on water, they were like, oh my gosh, it's a ghost, because they believed spirits lived in the water, because under the water was Sheol, the depths.
Yeah. And that mentality, depending upon what cultures that they then fell up under the control of, they continue to change their mentality, towards it. Especially once they came up under the Zoroastrians and then the Greeks, all of a sudden now you're getting more separation. You're getting more of a God runs the good place and there's the evil spirit being that's running the other place. When they learned that from the Persians with Agramenia and Ahura Mazda. And then with the Greeks, we see that in the New Testament when they start talking about Tartarus and Hades, and you can tell they're pulling this from that Greco-Roman understanding of the underworld. And we don't get a lake of fire until Revelations, which is in 2nd century. So to think that it all speaks in one voice would be foolish. And if it's not all speaking in one voice, then how can it exist?
One perspective that really opened my eyes is learning that, or just recognizing that all of these different empires in the past, they were all based, like they all used gods to validate their position and authority. And in their literature, you see their text about their gods. You see polemics against other gods from other cultures. So it really opened my eyes and perspective to the fact that a lot of the book is polemics. A lot of the book is like these gods are just like, my daddy is bigger than your daddy, and he's gonna beat him up.
Yeah. What's funny is that how sometimes if the kid is acting bad, then the guy says, well, I'm gonna let the other person beat you up. Like with the whole situation with Mesha, and they're fighting against Shamash. It's like, oh, y'all ain't acting right. And the reason why we're not acting right, and this is why the Shamash was able to come in and destroy us, is because we weren't worshiping our God right. So now their big daddy God beat us up because we weren't acting right. But then as soon as we start acting right, now our big daddy God beat up their God.
Right, because the face of daddy turned his face away from us. Exactly. He turned his back from us and let the consequences play out.
And they do it all the time. That is the primary way of, but that was a primary way of thought for most of the people in that region. They got the whole story with Yahweh when the Ark of the Covenant, because they believed their God was living in the Ark of the Covenant. That's his home. And these guys lived in these temples. That was their home. So when the Ark of the Covenant was taken into the temple of, I think it was Dagon, and then Dagon's statue kept falling, they was like, oh yeah, our God is fighting and beat up your God. That's why your statue kept falling. Like, these people literally believe that these gods lived in these objects. And this is why they have to have their temples and their homes and their tent of meetings, because they thought their gods dwelled with them. And when they did, depending upon the people's behavior, determined whether or not their God supported them in war and battle.
But even that, right? That is an argument they made in the literature that our gods were fighting and your God fell over. But then later in other texts, you're making idols that have no life or breath in them. They're just made of,
which is the different authors, different people, different time zone edits. Exactly. They give power to the idol when it suits them for their God to defeat that idol. But then in other instances, those idols have no power. They're dead. Why are you even? Because I think, was that Jeremiah who says that or something like that? No. Or is Isaiah, Ezekiel? It's one of them dudes. I think it was one of the, somewhere in that category, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, or Isaiah.
And like, what was your God sleeping? Is he taking a nap? Is he going to the bathroom?
Oh, Elijah. Now Elijah did that one too, didn't he? When they was.
I don't know. It's all like so converged together in my mind at this point.
Yeah, I think Elijah also did that one, pulled that one out. It was like, oh, your God ain't doing nothing when he was going against the priest of Baal. But then being in the temple with Dogen, then it's like, oh yeah, your God is, he's living in there. There's a God inside that statue, and he's falling over. It's no different than how people are today, that they write stuff based on whatever the narrative that they want to get across, whatever they want people to believe. That's all that matters. And if you're not reading this book and coming to an understanding of it from that perspective, you have no idea what you're reading. Right?
You could take any event and correlate anything to anything and say God was doing it. And if you get someone simple enough who can't think critically, they're going to believe it.
Oh, yeah. I'm always amazed that when, I don't know how old you are, because I forgot to ask. I forgot to make sure you're over 21.
I am. I'm over 21.
Okay. But I was amazed at how many people were saying, oh, God was punishing the behavior of the people in New Orleans, and that's why he sent Katrina. And I'm sitting up here like every year, we even call it a hurricane season. We know hurricanes come through that region every year. How are you going to put this on some spiritual thing? Some God is doing this. These people, this is a yearly, annual event that we give it a season. That's just nature. But they always want
Yeah.
to claim some God did it. Oh, he purposely destroyed Puerto Rico with Maria because God didn't like what was going on in Puerto Rico. And people are dumb enough to believe those sorts of things.
They did it to Haiti too.
Mm-hmm. Haiti, and then when Sandy went up to New Jersey, New York, they was like, "Oh yeah, because God is their sin city," and it's always some out in the wilderness, country ass pastor. There's nothing wrong with country people because
Well, never experienced a hurricane in their life.
yeah, there's always somebody like that, who says that. Now, when a tornado hit their ass, they never say that, "Oh, this is God's judgment." When they live these you out there in Oklahoma somewhere, they're never gonna say, "Oh, that was God's judgment for the tornado," but let a hurricane hit New Orleans and it's God's judgment.
It's very hypocritical. Very hypocritical.
Incredibly. That's what we was talking about yesterday on the live. Is the hip is well, it also had to do with Charlie Kirk, but it was the whole hypocrisy of Christianity, like within it, because people only identify their Christianity, their beliefs through their own little lens of their own little universe, and they can't stumble out of their own way of not seeing the hypocrisy that they preach and they talk about, because the very thing that they say is of God, when it happens to them in their little universe, they try to clean it up and make it look nice. Whereas, oh, God is taking me through a season. No, he was punishing this person because they're not acting right, but he's just taking you through a season so that you can be better. Same scenario though. And that's how, and they get that from this Bible. Because the Bible does the same thing. Oh, God is taking us, we turn, like you said earlier, we turn from God. So now we lost, and now we're being oppressed, and we're being under the Babylonians and everybody. And then when they get, but God is we're going to turn back to God, and it's going to be a freedom that we're going to have. But now to these other people, they turn against this guy. Let's genocide and kill all of them. Let's enslave them. Let's take all their little baby girls and make them our wives. It's, you understand what I'm saying about the hypocrisy in that one and how they see it?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Right. That's one of the reasons why I like the and I know we're supposed to be talking about how can this good God create things like hell, but how can they see their God as a good God when he is willing to say that, oh, for my special little children, I'll just give them correction, but for the other people, we're going to genocide them. That's not a good God at all. That's a bad parent. Like, I don't.
The main thing that's concerning me about the Kirk thing is how all of these nationalists literally are saying he's a martyr and that they are now radicalized.
Mm-hmm.
Like, bitch, you were already radicalized. Sorry.
I don't mind cussing on here to a certain degree. Depends on the words. But yes. It's yeah, I'm just surprised. Like they immediately tried to come out and blame the left. I'm an independent, by the way. I'm neither left nor right. I'm in the middle.
Yeah.
But
I'm not even on the spectrum.
But they immediately come out, and even the so-called president of this country, who any other time when America faces something that could be divisive, every other president, whether we're talking about Clinton or Bush or Obama or first Bush, they have all tried to like bring the country together when the country has a divisive an act like this happens that is splitting the country. This joker this morning was just talking about it's the left fault, the radical right. They just want people to have jobs and keep the immigrants out. It's the left. These are the vicious people. I'm like, dude, you're supposed to be in a position right now where you're bringing the country together. Because After this stuff happened, a high school football game here in San Antonio had to be canceled because threats were made. Right, the HBCUs all shut down their campuses because threats were all of a sudden made. Nobody wants to talk about the kids in Colorado uh, being killed at that school shooting. They want to focus on this dude. You got all kinds of people receiving death threats, and you're not trying to bring
But
people together.
getting so hung up and caught up on the fact that not everyone is going to react or mourn or care as much as you based off of their perspective of this person.
Yeah.
And they want to fight about, well, they want to fight about who has the moral high ground. It's so dumb. There's much more pressing matters than to worry about how some people are responding to this event.
Exactly. And so they were saying that this man was preaching freedom of speech, right? So why are they trying to shut down other people's freedom of speech to not care about this man? Like, if this is what he was a proponent of, shouldn't I then have the freedom to not give a damn? Have the freedom. I don't personally celebrate anybody's death, but if somebody was like, oh, one less person, or I've seen others like, oh yeah, Charlie Kirk is in hell now. If that's somebody should be able to have their freedom to be able to say that, just like this man had his freedom to say the heinous shit that he said. But they want to shut that down.
No, because they spell amendments and rights and freedom of speech and blah blah blah, but then they say truth. That, like, their version of truth is the only freedom of speech that can be spoken.
Yeah, and that was the other part of it, is that they only want what they believe is truth to be the thing that's spoken. If they deem your stuff untrue, then you need to be quiet and shut up. Right.
Yep. But it comes with he was a very well-known political commentator.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
His passing doesn't exclude him from the same sort of critique anyone else in a position that he held.
Exactly.
So, why is freedom of speech not allowed on, you know what I mean?
Because there's so much that would make him an anti-hero, and they're trying their best through the media, through politicians are trying their best to make this man into a hero. The president is trying to saying that he's going to give this man the highest award, the Medal of Freedom, that any civilian can get. And they are trying to hero this guy.
Sus. It's all sus to me. Very sus.
And yeah, and all the stuff all the videos of what this guy has said, you cannot make him a hero to the majority of the people.
Yeah.
It's just not going to work. And then when you have media and government trying to do that, it becomes like they're forcing it, like trying to force you to accept that's going to be the narrative. And like you just said, anytime someone of prominence passes, it's not going to, the narrative is going to be criticized. The person is going to be criticized deeply. So they can give up. To me, it's stupid. And, I'd rather focus on those kids the school shootings. I understand adults, it's a political thing, and the politicians they are more concerned about political things like that, because that could one day be them. Because here we are 2 months away from the politicians up in Minnesota, Melissa Hortman and her family being assassinated. Now, of course, she was a Democrat, so you're not getting the same type of play out of the right wing, of course.
And what did Kirk want? He wanted the person who did it to be bailed out of jail.
Yeah.
And but so I don't. If you want to get back on your topic.
Mm-hmm. Yes, because we talked about him yesterday. And even though there is another video I'm gonna make about the situation later on today, it's not directly about him. It's about the fact that the expectation for people to have to pray in Congress, like I don't know if you guys saw, and I'm probably, but some of y'all who watch this aren't the ones who watch the other videos later anyway. But the Senate on the floor, Congress floor, they had a moment of silence. Okay, moment of silence. But then some representatives said they wanted to yield their time so that prayer can be done. And I don't know if it was the Democrats or Republicans. Of course, they claim it was the Democrats, but I don't know, don't really care. But some people were like, hell no. And you can hear one person was like, fuck no. But people were like, no, no. There's supposed to be a separation of church and state. And this is, to me, this is why I was like, okay, moment of prayer. I mean, silence one thing, but now you want to force everybody to pray. There are some of those members of Congress who are Muslim, some who are atheists. They should not be forced to stand there and listen to a prayer in the halls of government.
Well, I mean, even in that case, if government wants to hold a prayer service, it should be silent so that everybody can pray to their each individual, you know, not someone standing up there praying for them.
Right, and that's when you're right. That's when the prayer should happen to yourself in your moment of silence. And what really pissed me off, they had a moment of silence for him. Where was the moment of silence for those kids who were shot 60 seconds after he was shot in the school in Colorado? Congress ain't said jack about that. The media has barely even mentioned it. No. To me, they're a bunch of hypocrites and just out for their own agendas. And these people claim to be Christians, good Christians.
I am, just to let you know, I am a Celtic Christian agnostic.
What the hell?
I know, right? But it's just where I am. It's like I grew up with Christianity, so Christ, the figure of Christ had a lot of influence. I think that his teachings alone is what kept me from going fully indoctrinated. But that's my own personal experience. And then Celtic, because I wanted to explore how Christianity came in contact with my ancestors.
Okay.
How they incorporated it into their beliefs, and then maybe explore their beliefs. But the agnosticism is because I don't know. I don't know if any of this is true.
Okay.
So, you know, but when it comes to like the concept of hell or heaven, I perceive this as ancient people processing legacy. They don't want to leave. So people lose loved ones and they want to hold on to their memory, and heaven was like a holding box for them, or hell was a place of, if you did bad things, you ended up in there because you went down in infamy. So I've kind of upgraded my understanding of heaven and hell to what kind of legacy you leave behind in the collective memory of humanity, not an actual literal place that you're set to.
I can dig that, because I understand what you're saying. Like, it's kind of like oh guys, there's a movie that I really love that kind of demonstrates that. It's an animated movie, but basically, shit, it is killing me that I can't think of the movie. I know my wife knows what movie I'm thinking about, so she should be typing it up right now. But it's the little kid with the guitar, and it's the whole Day of the Dead thing.
Coco.
Coco, thank you. Love that movie.
Right, and you hold the memory of your loved ones. If you don't, that's why they have the little where they put their pictures and the flowers and gifts. Right. And they're remembering their loved ones, and it keeps their loved ones alive in the afterlife.
And then once somebody forget, then they do disappear off into another unknown. So I like the way they did that in that movie, that they had another unknown that they disappeared into once they're completely forgotten by the Earth-based humans. But this, if you know, in that story though, how well you are remembered determine how plush your life was.
Yes.
The lesser remembered people, you know, they got jobs and shit. They ain't really got stuff going on. You know, they get less gifts, which gives them less to trade and all that kind of stuff. But so that's my reference for understanding what you're saying. Uh, if you're remembered as some evil, horrible person, then the memory of you is the hell. If you're remembered as a great person, then the memory of you is the heaven.
Yeah, the impact or impression that you leave on humanity, how you recorded in history. Yeah,
other than that, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That was Coco's a good, that's a good connection to what I said. That's perfect, actually.
Yeah. And you know, other than that, heaven and hell is you create it right now. You have it right now in your life, on your perspective of your universe, how you live, the decisions you make every day. You know, if I decide that I'm going to go out and, you know, steal and take from people, and now I'm living a life on the run and all these sorts of things, or in prison, then I've created my own hell. You know, but if I decide that I'm going to take care of people, I'm going to love people, I'm going to educate people, then I've created what to me is my heaven. Like the fact that and this is not to sound arrogant, but the fact that I have made a bunch of decisions in my life where I had to work like a dog, and now in my 50s, I don't have to work. That to me is, I went through some hell to get to this heaven of having control. And it's not about how I live, it's about the fact that I have control of my time. So it's not about money, it's just control of my time is the most important thing to me, you know, as far as my personal self. That's heaven to me. But my life will be hell to others, you know? So heaven and hell is what you make it right now in your life.
Yep, and you can think of energy as currency. Some people just can't afford it.
It is, and
in the words of my prophetess Taylor Swift.
You're a Swiftie, okay? Oh, she's a prophet. That was a good one. I like that one. But I appreciate you, Becky. I'm gonna let this other person who's been waiting patiently to come up.
Of course. Thanks for talking to me.
All right,
thanks for letting me on. It's been fun.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Oh, did I not do it? Oh, I think I kicked that person too. Sorry. If you try to come back up, my guy, I think I hit the wrong button. Yeah, Becky threw me off at first with the Celtic Christian agnostic, but I understand she's taking some of the lessons that she learned from Christianity that are beneficial to her life, but she's looking at her ancestral religions, but is like all of it could be bullshit. For those who was asking, how can you have that? That's what she was expressing. So I get it. I know some of the people on Facebook and YouTube is like, what? But that's what yeah. And the agnostic at the end of it is perfect because it's saying that I understand how I develop in my morality, my personality, and the things that have been beneficial when I grew up indoctrinated into, but I'm looking at my ancestral stuff, but I'm not going to go as far and jump and say my ancestral stuff is true. It all might be bullshit, which is one of the things that I try to get people who like, oh, we got to go back to our ancestral religion in Africa with Ifa and stuff. Okay, but that still could be some bullshit, and most likely is some bullshit. All right. You're not going to be able to, as much as you can't prove Thor, you can't prove Shango, and both of them jokers are relatively the same dude, right? Because, and I want you to think about it, Shango and Thor Two different people from two different areas. All of them looked at thunder and lightning and said, there's a God that controls that, and he's a warrior God. One just gave him a hammer, and the other one gave him an axe. Even though in Marvel, now Thor has an axe. But it's looking at nature and saying, I wonder, or let me just make up some shit. Why are there bad people in the world? And it seems like good people, bad people get the money, they got the women, they live in the nice life, and they're horrible. And then they die. And they didn't get they get back that whole time. There must be a hell. There must be a hell. There must be a hell. Gotta be one. There must be one. Oh my gosh, here go those people. It's obvious to me that you guys have no idea on what the Bible says about the fire that will destroy the enemy and the wicked. If you truly knew the Bible, you would know where God got the fire of hell / lake of fire from. You guys are a laugh. Ha 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 ha. Atheists trying to educate the world on God, prove me wrong. I can point out clearly where the fire comes from in the Bible. And it didn't come from God, but it was exposed by God. You blind guides. One simple thing to shut that whole statement down is this, my dear. If your God is all powerful, is your God is all the omnis, all powerful, all knowing, and of all times. And your God then would be the creator of all things. How can something come into existence without this God creating it? Riddle me that. Povia Tia. I'm messing up your first name, so I'm just calling you Tia. Riddle me that, Tia. If your God is the creator of all things and omni everything, how can something come into existence without your God creating it? Because if something can come into existence without your God creating it, then that thing is just as powerful as your God. You see, I don't think they use critical thinking. I think it's like when they come into the room, the critical thinking has to be checked at the door. Kind of like in the coat closet. Got to put it in the coat closet. Critical thinking. Can't have none of that. Because they love to exonerate this God from having responsibility for any of the things that we see that are negative on this planet or negative in our history or any type of, if you believe in negative beings, we got to exonerate God from these things. Oh, the devil had free will, so he chose to fight God in heaven. God is all knowing, so in his creation of the devil, according to their belief, then God would have known by creating this devil that this is what would have happened. So therefore, this God is still responsible for the actions of this so-called devil, since this God went ahead and created the devil himself, right? Oh, and then the God that they believe in, he's the God of all good things. But yet he said that he creates the calamity, he creates the evil. Now, if he creates the calamity, what is a calamity? A calamity is a building falling. A calamity is a man going into a school and shooting up some children. That's a calamity. So your God creates the calamity of this man going into a school in Colorado and shooting these kids. Your God also creates the calamity of an engineer building a building in such a way that the building structure is not that great and it falls. There's like this bridge in Italy that collapsed on top of these people's houses back in the day. And your God is the engineer of that calamity because he knew that dude was going to do it that way. Yeah. Your God is the one who creates the tornadoes and ransacks and kills people. Yeah. See, You can't have it both ways. Y'all want to have it both ways, but you can't. You can't. You can't. See, and there she goes. The calamity clashes with the plan of another. Now, calamity, when he said, I create the calamity, your God said, I create the calamity. Where Isaac at? Where Isaac at? Is Isaac on here? If Isaac, throw that up here for me, Isaac, if you on here. Yeah, there you go. I see Isaac. He's here. But yeah, because I that's one of Isaac's favorites. He like to throw it. But your God created the calamity. So I want to hear it. Let's see. Let's bring up I am.
Hello.
Yeah. Hey, how old are you?
23.
All right. Good, good, good. Are you a believer?
I would say so, yeah.
Okay.
But what's the whole premise of this? Is just a good God created hell?
Yeah. Well, there's a longer title on my YouTube and Facebook page, but it's why would a good God create hell? Like, it's illogical. Can't be a good God.
Well, in the beginning, I would say darkness was always there. Darkness wasn't created by God. That darkness is just the absence of God. So that's what people would call hell.
No, he got a lake of fire where people are gonna be tormented, according to Revelations.
That'd probably be either man-made or like something that's just made when you leave God's presence. If God is eternity, limitless, then it's many different earths and stuff like that. That's why there's different levels of heaven.
If God is eternity and limitless, then how can the darkness not be God?
Because the darkness is something it's like a separation.
So you mentioned Genesis, and you're saying that because there was darkness, the darkness is not under God or within God. God is that darkness is outside of God. You're saying that
essentially like the light. Yeah, there's supposedly like how there's like light and darkness, light and the darkness.
Mm-hmm.
It's just essentially something to keep the world going, but that darkness is essentially the man-made stuff, the people who continuously rebel.
No, because you referenced Genesis, right? In Genesis, on each day it said, "Then was the day, and that was the night, and God saw that it was good." So the day and the night was good on each day. Day one, there was the morning and the evening, and it was good. Or some translations say there was the day and the night, and it was good. So there is the night, and this God says that it is good, according to your own reference of Genesis. So you can't now not separate and say that, oh, well, no, the darkness is man-made. Man wasn't around at that time.
No, not the night. Not the night. The night and the darkness is separate.
So the darkness
is something like, it's like a festering hate for God.
So before there was man, there was darkness. You just said that for Genesis. You said start in Genesis. Before there was man, there was the darkness. If there was no man, who and how can anything be separated from this God? What is separated from this God in Genesis 1, verse 1, that you mentioned?
The darkness.
So the darkness has a consciousness?
No, that's the whole point. It's unconsciousness. It's just pure raw unconsciousness.
So it's nothingness.
Yes.
So
but if humans were to be able to go into that space,
you believe that nothingness can exist?
The fact that you have to mention the word nothingness proves that it has an existence. But you
no, hell no. Mentioning the word nothingness does not prove that nothingness exists.
In the beginning was the what?
Which
the
one?
Word, right?
Yeah, I don't accept that, but sure.
God, but you don't accept that?
I don't believe in your Bible, so why would I accept that? That's what your Bible says.
Aside from the Bible, what was in the beginning, do you think? Because either way it goes, a good God would not create hell. It would be either a
first of all,
devious God, a trickster God, or something like that.
What we don't know. So to answer your question, even though you asked the question, then you just kept talking. We don't know. See, people who don't believe in a book like this or have to have that, we're cool with saying that we don't know, and there was no beginning actually. So there is no, as far as my scientific theories are the evidence of what I see in science and the universe, there is no beginning. There's just an infinite level of causations of singularities that continuously happen. So as far as the beginning, there is no
I like
beginning,
that theory.
right?
So
Now,
if we're going with that theory, are you still going?
now, yep, I sure am. So I have pregnant pauses in my cadence, okay?
Oh, no problem.
So because of that, what I will never accept is that is a demonstration of God, because you're trying to take, because many Christians try to take that and make it seem like, well, that is God. But it is not. It has absolutely nothing to do with a benevolent consciousness that created everything in existence. Go ahead.
So you said you're going with the theory that it's just an infinite causation and effect, like, right?
Yep.
So if that's the case, it's an infinite cause and effect.
Mm-hmm.
A good God would not create hell. It would be a bad God, which is why it says, don't eat from the fruit of good and evil. But I'm not going with the Bible base. I'm going with the fact of, if there's an infinite cause and everything is just always happening, will happen, shit like that,
Mm-hmm.
then there's always going to be the infinite person that's like, I kind of want to be the one in charge of this. So that's what happens. And then if it's the, what'd you call it? Consciousness?
Yeah.
The unconsciousness, that would just be that person still believing that they are God themselves, like the demiurge in that concept.
Okay, so I know okay, I was just about to ask you, so are you, because I know we got away from the fact of nothingness, that I brought that up because I was showing how nothingness can ever exist, so there is no nothingness. But we can move on from that. You are saying that, so you believe that in the demiurge?
No, I believe that, like, in infinity, it's just a big old battle to, like, either be good or bad. And eventually there's like it's the same way Nirvana and shit like that. You know how they have reincarnation. It's just a big game, and we all playing our part. Some people choose to either stray away from their part or play their part too well.
Right, but you said that if there is hell, then there's an evil God that made it.
Mm-hmm.
So so you are separating, there's a good God and then there's a bad God.
In the end, it's all God, and it's just nothingness. That would be the nothingness.
So the nothingness is the bad God that is separated from the good God.
No. In the end, we are all essentially God. We are just the being, the existence, the universe itself.
Okay, so
like there's atoms. Atoms make up the building blocks of life. We're living, aren't we?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I think I do, because it's like what I'm hearing are multiple different metaphysical thought processes from different point of views that you're merging, that for you're merging into one.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to be negative towards you in saying that. It's just that I've heard one person have an aspect of your viewpoint, another person have a different aspect of your viewpoint, and it's like you have these viewpoints all merged together. But you're saying that in essence everything is God, but if there's a lake of fire that was created by a negative God, but wouldn't that still be the God?
It would be a different aspect of the God, but it would not be the God. It would be a separation. It would be us drawing power from God.
Even the aspects, so like if you looked at Hinduism, from my understanding of Hinduism, even the aspects of Brahma are still Brahma, right? Even though they go and do different things, they are still Brahma.
Yes.
So it is still the same God that is supposed to be good. So there's an aspect of that God that can be evil.
Yes, just like the aspect of personalities, how humans have different some humans have different personality.
But it's still that human.
Yes.
So that human is not all good. So then this God cannot be all good if he got aspects that are evil.
Yes, but if you were to train yourself and go back through millennia, since you believe in the infinite, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you train yourself to just, separate yourself from that evil, would you not become then all good, or would you become
No,
the evil itself.
you can never separate. See, that's the difference. A God can never separate itself from itself, or just as well as you can never separate yourself from yourself. You might bury some shit down deep to where it doesn't have that much control over your actions and thoughts and deeds, but it's still you. So it will still be that God. And if that God is able to take a portion of itself and separate itself, it is no longer the fullness of that God anymore. So now it's no longer God.
That's where you get the concept of a bad God.
So this God split. So
I wouldn't say that. I would just say that's where they get the concept.
Yeah,
that's why I'm saying that a good God would not create hell.
But the evil part of the God that did have homoousius, that one God that was all one and the same, then it split. Now you just got the good God, and then the evil part of that God created the hell. And the good God is just sitting over here. Can't do nothing about the evil God.
In theory, yes.
Then it's,
if you told your kids don't go outside, it's some crazy people outside, and they go outside, how do you go and then, like, are you gonna take yourself outside?
I hear you.
It's like if you said, I don't know how to explain it properly, but it's just like you go outside, you know you're supposed to stay inside essentially. You're in the Garden of Eden or in the presence of God. Mm-hmm. And he says, look, out there, I don't got no control of nothing out there. But in here, I do. In my house, I do. At school, anything can happen, anything like shit like that. Not shit like that. I'm sorry for saying it like that.
I don't care. I cuss sometimes, I'm sorry.
But it's just like, it's different aspects. So it's like all the God, I wouldn't say it's all the gods, but it's like a conglomeration, a hive mind.
Mm-hmm. So who is the God of, so do you follow the Bible?
The Bible is Yahweh. If the Greek manuscript is it's the Dionysian system.
Not getting into all that. I just went through all that yesterday with a guy who gave me a headache about it because it drove me crazy, pissed me off. Because he don't, y'all be killing me with that. Because it turns out, to me, it's a bunch of bullshit. But the thing about it's the God of the Bible, the God of the Bible, the one who supposedly created Sheol, the one who supposedly created Tartarus, the one who created Gehenna, the one who created the lake of fire. That's the God of the Bible. Right?
It would be the God of parts of the Bible, making the Bible. It wouldn't be the God itself.
So everything that good happens in the Bible, that's the good God. Everything bad happens in the Bible, that's the bad God.
Yes, that's why they say that's stuff alone. Because it's not supposed to be a good and a bad God. It's supposed to be God. But then when humans were made and
that's my point. It's supposed to just be one God as far as the Bible is concerned.
That's what I'm saying. So saying a good God created hell, that's what creates the separation. Separation is what causes hell.
No, it's just that maybe that God is not good. That there is no such thing as an all good God. Like every other group of people understood that, except for the Zoroastrians and the Israelites. Everybody else understood that. Everybody knew Zeus got some good shit, Zeus got some bad shit. Ra got some good shit, Ra got some bad shit. You know, every one of these guys, none of them were perfect in their goodness nor their badness. But it's the development of Judaism after understanding Zoroastrianism, and then Christianity follows suit after that, and then Islam after that, that all of a sudden there's this all good, perfect God. When the entire Bible demonstrates that this God of the Bible he fluctuates. He's not all good, he's not all bad. You know, he owns some fuckery in my opinion, but he's not all good. And there is no separation.
The God of the Bible is not, but the God of everything that created everything wouldn't be good. It would just be God. But we gave them terms, gave them power to be either good or bad,
And
shit like that.
And where do you get your ideas of who this God is, this all good one?
It's not an idea of an all good one. We created the idea of an all good God.
So you don't believe there's an all good God?
I believe there's a God, and then I believe there's the fact that when humans were made, he said, man is humanity, as in man, because we still have infinite. We're part of the infinity.
You sound very Gnostic. Like the idea of the Pleroma, huh?
I mean, you could probably say Gnostic.
Because that's the, like in Gnosticism, there's the idea that the Pleroma is this divine energy, neither good nor bad. It is just this divine energy that created everything. From that divine energy was the Sophia, which is wisdom, was created. And then from the Pleroma and Sophia was created the demiurge. Now the demiurge, Yordaboth, decided, I don't want to deal with the Pleroma, I don't want to deal with Sophia. I'm gonna make this material universe the way I want to make it. And that's why everything is fucked up. And that Yahweh is actually the Yordaboth, which is what the Old Testament God is. And the Jesus character was talking about going back to gaining knowledge so you can go back to the Pleroma and be in the infinite with the Pleroma, which is still neither bad nor good, but it's just the existence within this energy, right? So does that fit more of what you're thinking?
If it's a part of it, we still have other, I wouldn't say other lives, but beyond this life, nothing can be created or destroyed. And you said nothingness doesn't exist, right?
Right. That's why there could be no nothingness. They can't have this place separate from this God, because there cannot be a nothingness.
Exactly. So the separation that we create is ignorance. It's just ignoring the fact that, wait a minute, could there be actually just a whole good God? If there's a good God, there has to be an evil God. And then it creates the separation.
Yeah. That's what the Zoroastrians did.
But you said there can be no separation from God.
If this God exists, yes, there can never be a separation.
There is no separation from God.
But
it's just the fact that humans create the fact that there's a separation from God.
Right. And so this God of the Bible that creates this lake of fire cannot be one is not a good God, and cannot be God. Nor could it be God. Yes. Huh?
I agree with you. I'm just saying that saying that a good God created hell, that would defeat the purpose.
Yeah, but that's what the people who believe in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam believe.
Because that fits their separation belief.
That their God is all good, but yet their God creates this lake of fire, this Tartarus, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, like creates their separation belief. But in like the Bible, it has good stuff, it has bad stuff. You just got to figure out and follow the good stuff. But it's not really good stuff. It's just common sense.
Yeah, most of the stuff, it's not even worth it. I'd rather just read something like the Tao Te Ching, because I don't have to deal with none of the bad shit, none of the dumb shit. So I wouldn't even waste the time of trying to decipher and go through it if I can just read a book that just leads me into being a good person.
Go through it, that's still leaving people in ignorance.
No, I don't require it, because like I was saying, if you read have you ever read the Tao Te Ching?
The who?
The Tao Te Ching.
The Tao Te Ching, no sir.
So if you read the Tao, it's only 81 sayings. It's just 80. I think it's like 81. Yeah, it's only like 81 sayings. You can read the Tao and get everything that is supposed to be good out the Bible. You can get it just from reading the Tao. So therefore, you're still not in a state of ignorance, because it has everything that is good from the Bible, without you needing a savior, though. You don't need a savior. You are the savior of yourself. So that's why I said there is not even a need to read the Bible. Like, that's the first book I gave my kids when they started reading. Was the Tao.
The Tao Te Ching?
Mm-hmm. And I'm not even saying Lao Tzu, the author of it, is real. He may not be. I don't care. Doesn't matter if he's real or not. The information is here.
I said the wisdom in it.
Yeah, it's the wisdom in it that's all that matters. And it's wisdom without the fuckery. Like men are created as men and women are equal in it. Leadership should be. So he calls what you would call this energy God, he calls the way, right? So he's talking about the overarching idea is that you need to get into the flow of the way, get into how the energy of the universe functions, right? Don't fight against it, just work with it. He talks about how a government leader should lead in such a way that the people think that they made society good and made society better without the leader's involvement. That's how a good leader should be. A good leader doesn't need to be out front and be shining, right? But it's leading the people to make society better. That men and women are equal. He sometimes refers to the way as a male, sometimes he refers to the way as female. And showing that it's equality. It ain't about one gender being superior over another gender, right? Nor people being superior over another people, but that we should all be doing things for the betterment of ourselves and our society. And if something that is a betterment for ourselves don't better society, then it's probably not a betterment for ourselves. So
I get that.
Yeah, it has more. It to me, it has better morality than the Bible does. Because some of the morality of the Bible is that it's a good thing to kill a woman if she is found not a virgin on her wedding night. That's a good thing. Or to kill people for the act of adultery. That's a good thing in the Bible.
In my theory, that's probably something that I wouldn't say a good God, but the God put in there as for somebody to, go and be like, oh, yep, that makes sense. And then it turns out that they were the one that did that. He's like, yep, now you get what I'm saying?
No, you kind of lost me right there. That's something that a person put in there, or you saying that's something
that a person could put in there?
Oh, yeah.
Because people say it's made by God. Rewritten by, not rewritten, but edited and stuff like that by King James.
That was in there before James. That was part of the. You can find that, in the Septuagint.
In general, the translations have been.
No, that part of the translation of killing a woman who committed adultery. Now the story was added later in the Septuagint. It was added into the later on, but it was added well before James came around. You understand what I'm saying? So when James would have saw that, it was a story that was already present. Just like people try to say that James added the slavery aspect to the Bible. No, slavery was already there before. Like Leviticus 25:44, that was already there before James got his hands on it. He just was happy it was already, motherfuckers just happy it was already up. So, you can't. I don't blame. I put things in their time perspectives before I was assessed that, oh, this person probably did this or that person. Now, what I would say is that because of the culture of the time frame that this Bible is being written and written down, that those scribes at that time frame would have put in there that if a woman is found to not be a virgin, then she should be stoned, because that was how they lived their society. Women were treated like property. So they would write that this God deems it so that women are treated as property. Right? So that's why it is not God writing or God inspired. It is man writing in the creation of this God.
Essentially, yes.
Because
that's why I get the when you say the infinite, I'm thinking about the fact that if there was essentially a good God, it would probably be somebody that, went back in time, fucked around and found out after trying to fix some shit, and then was like, damn, I really got to let all this shit happen. I'm going to save my people, though.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. That's what when you read the Tao Te Ching, don't read it fast, right? Read it real slow. Like I took I think it's 81 days, 81 sayings. I took 81 days to read it. Meaning that I read the first saying and I thought about it. I took down notes. I wrote my thought processes on it. And the first saying is this is the moment you give the way a name, it is no longer the way. The moment you put it the moment you describe it in a book, it is no longer the way. The moment you give it characteristics, it is no longer the way. So the moment that you put God in a book, give it a name, give him characteristics, you have now taken what would be the infinite and smashed it down into a box, into a description that you can now determine his personality, determine what he would do, wouldn't do, and all these other things. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that, just that thought alone, you say, okay, well, if you read the Vedas, you read the Hebrew text, the Greek text, or anybody else's text, all these guys got names. All these guys got personalities. All these guys got attributes and traits and all this bullshit. So none of them can be, if there is a God, none of them can be God because they are limited. And if a God has been split to have two separate halves, that now is a limitation. Because now this God can only be one thing and that other God can only be one thing.
I agree.
Yeah. Thank you for the lightning bolts. I don't know what the lightning bolts mean, but thank you.
That's from Zeus. No, I'm kidding.
No. Dawn from the waters one. Thank you for the lightning bolts. I don't know. Maybe I can get me some Zeus power. I know this has nothing to do with nothing that we talk about. I do believe that if I ever get struck by lightning, that I'll survive it. So,
Same.
Just a thought that I always had. I ain't dying of no damn lightning strikes. But anyway, I appreciate you, man. I'm trying to be quicker with this, with people coming on and off the show. So I'm gonna let Shishak come up, okay?
All right, no problem.
All right, thank you for being here. Let me see, make sure I hit these buttons right. I sure hit them wrong before. Shishak, how you doing?
Hi, I deconstruct. I appreciate your thread because you make people think and choose what they want. And I was listening and about, the serpent and Yah in the garden. What is your take on it?
So I'm sorry, I was just sharing the link on my Facebook and YouTube real quick. So the whole story with the serpent and this God in the garden, to me, it is a demonstration of that, how piss poor of a planner and a parent this God is. That he would purposely create a being in the garden that is cunning and knowingly allow for that cunning being to be near his creation that doesn't know the difference between good and evil, or wouldn't be able to distinguish something that is a truth or a lie, and have all that come together in around a tree of knowledge of good and evil that he forbid them to take part in, and then just stand back and let it happen, even though he supposedly knows all things that's going to happen, and then go about punishing the man, the earth, the man, the woman, and the serpent. I think it's ridiculous. I think it's piss poor parenting, and it's a bad God.
Okay. I'd like to step outside of it and give maybe what my interpretation of it is. It's funny how Yah wanted to keep the man and the woman under control, right?
Mm-hmm.
believe what I say and do all these things. We've been there. And how the serpent will come in and tell man that he is even more than that and give him knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Now they blame it on the knowledge that's going to take man down and, never allow him to get back up to some type of level that we seem to be horribly just mimicking today. But what was the knowledge? What was the true knowledge? Because we have these individuals writing these books from a period of when they didn't understand any of that. And to take a step even further, and I'm not acknowledging this at all. I'm just saying that it's kind of funny how the first civilization in the world all had this type of serpent worship. And unfortunately, we're told that's one thing or another. Maybe it's symbolism of something of a higher realm. Maybe it's symbolism of a superior knowledge to let you know who you are. Because I don't see us doing a very good job. I don't care about what side I'm talking about today. And the Nag Hammadi also mentions this, Sophia. You know that because I know I've watched your platform for a while on Facebook, and I didn't know you were on TikTok, but I'm glad I found you because even that book mentions stuff that is mystical, and all we're getting out of it is what they say it said. Now, I even question Stitch's account of the creation, because he was an Orientalist, and I'm not trying to knock any type of society. All I'm saying is, when you're a part of these societies, you believe what they believe instead of, trying to find out what the truth is about everything. Unfortunately, we're on the lower realms, so all we get is what they say it says. But I believe they say something much more profound for man and woman on this planet.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just shut up because that was a lot. Sorry.
Well, to work kind of through some of the things that you were saying, I respect Zechariah Sitchin for his early attempts at deciphering the cuneiform writings. Of course, they found many mistakes that Zechariah had made because Zechariah didn't have access to the technologies that we've had over the last 20 years.
Right.
This is why some of his things that he said have come out to be wrong.
Right.
But he was working with what he had at the time. He didn't have, the level of computing that we have today to be able to decipher a language. But he was the initiator of deciphering that language,
Right.
So I give him that credit. So the whole planet Nibiru and all that kind of stuff is like, no, bro, we're not going with the aliens. But
Right.
as far as, so I give him, as a gentleman was saying yesterday, I give him some grace on his lack of technology. Now, but we still stand on those shoulders. Of course, a person is going to be biased towards a certain level of thought, depending upon where they are, who they're surrounding themselves with, and what they've surrounded themselves with. Now, the serpent, because everybody has that. But so for me, when I look at the serpent situation, I look at it from the different cultural perspective that the different cultures in that area looked at it. For instance, like the Kemetic people, they saw the serpent, and this was personified in the goddess Rani-Nutet. They saw the serpent as a protector, but they also saw the cobra as an enlightenment and a renewal, a renewal of youth, because when they watched a snake shed its skin, to them, that was kind of a fountain of youth kind of thing to them. There was a renewal kind of thing. So there was a wisdom, there's a healing, So it starts to take on all these different aspects depending upon how people see that the symbolism of a snake shedding its skin. And of course, these were agrarian people, so the serpents kept the rats and stuff out of the garden. So that's why they praise Rainy Nutech and praise serpents, because you keep the rats out of the garden, we have a better rats and rabbits and stuff out of the garden. We have a better harvest. We get to eat more. We survive more. So praise the serpent, right? This and then from the more Eastern philosophies, the serpent was, the spine and the how it comes up to your pineal gland with the chakras, and so you're raising your energy and what those things represents as far as getting rid of shame, guilt, fear, loss of love, the lies that you tell yourself, the disconnection from all people, and being able to release your earthly attachments. So it had that representation. And I can go on, and so let me stop, because I can go on and on and on about all these other different Eastern and Mediterranean traditions dealing with serpents. But the serpent was never viewed as a bad thing until you start to get into this Abrahamic tradition.
Right.
Before that, it was a good
knowledge.
And even in theirs, okay, vipers, this God sends vipers to bite the people in the Exodus,
right.
But then he tells Moses to put a golden serpent on a stick, and whoever looks at it is healed, right? So it has both negative and positive connotations, even for their time frame. But of course, modern day Christians, serpents are evil, serpents are evil, serpents are evil. And it is because it wasn't until like the second, third, and fourth century that the serpent became the devil. When the serpent was actually telling them the truth, because in Canaanite and Akkadian and Sumerian, which is where they came from, the serpent represented wisdom. And so when he was telling them, no, this God just is this other God, this other dude, because he's just another guy, right? He's not a primary. He's trying to keep you from wisdom, from knowledge, because he's afraid of you becoming like him, right? And the God in this story says it himself. Now that man has become like us, speaking to the heavenly council. Now that he's become like us, we got to keep him out of the garden, because he'll have access to the tree of life, and man would live forever. We can't have man living like, being like us and having immortality. If you really dive deep into that, that is the Sumerian story of the Anunnaki enslaving man and don't want the slaves to revolt. So when you're talking about the control aspect, so that takes me to the control part, that keeping man away from knowledge is the way to keep control over man and keep him enslaved. Because in the Sumerian version, Adapa and Titi were brought into the Garden of Eden to manage the caretaking of the gods by all the little human animals running around. Right. So that's my extended take on it.
Well, thank you. That's a good one, because I'm pretty much 100% with you until you mentioned that Sumer is an older civilization. I don't believe Sumer ever was an older civilization. I believe it was an annex from Kemet that went into Sumer, Babylon, and created a civilization for man. The reason why I say that is, obviously, when you look at them, and there's no way to date rock, but they are much older than what they say. And this new discovery under this pyramids, SARS item, they state that they're as old as 38,500 years ago.
Oh, so let me give you mine on that one, if you don't mind. So the first thing, about 30 to 50,000 years ago began an ice age, right? prior to that ice age is when there was a civilization in Kemet, and the pyramids and the Sphinx was built, right? Somewhere before that ice age, whether it was 30,000 years ago or 50,000 years ago. The water weathering on the Sphinx demonstrates the Sphinx was there the last time the Sahara was green, and that would have been during that ice age that it was green. So civilization was existing. Now, at the same time, there was no Persian Gulf.
There was no what?
The Persian Gulf didn't exist.
Okay.
The rivers of the Tigris and Euphrates were how they merged right before the Persian Gulf and into modern day Kuwait. That river system flowed through what is now the Persian Gulf, right? About 20 years ago, radar images showed that there are ancient riverbeds under the Persian Gulf. It is the most logical theory right now is that during that same time that whoever was building in Kemet, that there were a group of people who was living in that area of the Persian Gulf. But then 9,000 to 12,000 years ago, when the Younger Dryas flood happened, the waters there that came and became the Persian Gulf would have reacted differently than how it would have reacted in the Mediterranean. Those waters, and let me be clear.
So they say.
Well, no, the Mediterranean didn't exist either. That was a valley. That was land, right? So the Nile River and that Nile River basin.
All right, let me leave. I'm sorry, I'll be back. Thank you.
Okay, I'll keep explaining this since I'm in the middle of it. So that Nile River and Nile River basin actually flowed into a landmass that is the Mediterranean. So when the Younger Dryas flood happened, the Mediterranean would have received hella flood through the Bering Straits. I mean, through the, not the Bering Straits, where the Rock of Gibraltar and all that kind of stuff. And that would have flooded that very fast. But the Persian Gulf flooded slower at like 6 feet per day, or 6 feet. Some say 6 feet per day, some say 6 feet per 10 days. But it would have flowed much slower. Those people on a hastily migration moved up until they got to where the city of Ur is established. And those are the Sumerians. And one of the indicators that they could not have been a people or offshoot of the Kemetic people is that the Sumerian language is not a Semitic language. Kemetic language, Akkadian language, those are Semitic languages. The Sumerians, not a Semitic language, and they don't know where it comes from. They don't know the origin of the Sumerian language. Haven't found anything to be able to distinguish where that language came from. But then they merged with the Akkadians and actually shared civilizations with them. And this is why Sumerian kings and Akkadian kings kept switching back and forth. And of course, they created their Akkadian Sumerian empire that stretched from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean. And so these civilizations, as far as our recorded history, they were around at that 9,000, 12,000 BCE time frame, the same as the people of Göbekli Tepe. And that's a whole nother one that's up here in this Turkish area. We are still trying to discover who those people were. I don't think they found any language yet, anything that would determine what their language was, at least not that I've seen. They just, the pillars got constellations on them. They know they got houses. They would place people were living in the temples. And they think that they were hunter-gatherers and farmers, that they were in a mixed state, hunter-gatherer and farming at the same time in Göbekli Tepe, and that's dating back to 13,000, 12,000 years ago, which is right around that time frame of the Younger Dryas. So, but you have to imagine that when this ice age happened, everybody, the only place people could live would be in this small equatorial kind of area, not even the equator, really. Yeah, well, yeah, it's equatorial, tropical Cancer, tropical Capricorn area. And then when all that water is coming off the lands, is flooding, the Mediterranean is created, the Persian Gulf is created. This is where the flood stories are originating from. But you had civilizations that was there prior to it, the ones that were able to survive through this ice age. But they are not the same as the civilizations that would become the Egyptians that we know. They're not the ones of the, societies that we would know. There was some different, understanding, name, and technologies before that. And honestly, I think that this is where the idea of the Anunnaki come from, that there were some societies that was living in far away. I can't fully dismiss Lemuria. I want to dismiss Lemuria, but I can't fully dismiss Lemuria existing between Madagascar and the South Pacific Islands and up to India, because them damn there's no logical explanation for how the lemurs are in each one of those places without there being a landmass there at some point. So if there was a Lemuria, we don't know what level of technology they were, and they could be mistaken for the gods that was fighting in the skies according to the Bhagavad Gita, or the gods that were fighting in the sky according to the Sumerian text. We don't know. Atlantis, I'm a little more skittish on, and Mu, I'm real skittish on Mu. Don't. The circumstantial evidence for Mu is very limited, so I need more evidence for those. But to go back to the subject matter, if this God was a good God, why would you put a serpent? Why would you create a cunning serpent? Why would you then put that cunning serpent and put him in a garden with your smooth brain creations that you've only told not to eat from a tree because they'll die, and then they don't even know what death is? What kind of threat is that? What kind of threat is you might die? I don't even know what the hell death is. That makes no sense. That's like when my child. So I didn't let my kids eat ketchup until they were like 5 or 6 years old. And if you're a parent, you understand why you don't let your kids eat ketchup till they're 5 or 6 years old, right? So why would that would be like me threatening my children when they're 1 year old, saying that if you don't start crawling, because none of my children crawled, if you don't start crawling, I'm not gonna let you eat ketchup. At 1 year old, 2 years old, they're like, what the fuck is ketchup? I don't even know what ketchup is. I don't even have a concept of ketchup. I don't even know what's so great about ketchup until they were 5 and they got some ketchup, and then by then we had a better understanding. But yeah, so this guy is a piss poor ass parent, and that's a bad God. If that is the God of the Bible, then he is not good at all. And that is, according to this story, the God of the Bible. That is. I don't even know why y'all keep talking to Fred. Sir, you can't prove where we come from. I don't need to prove where we come from. You have a book that claims where we come from, and we can demonstrate that your book is wrong. You don't have to have the correct answer in order to prove an incorrect answer. Right? That serpent was part of God's counsel. No, sir. The serpent was not part of that God's counsel. I thought we went over this while you was on here the last time, Rupert. But let me show you how this God. Let me read to you how this God is. The serpent is not part of God's counsel. So you got to go to Genesis 2. All right. And then in Genesis 2, is it 2? Yeah, Genesis 2. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? I know I've seen it. Oh yeah. So Genesis 2, verse 19. So out of the ground the Lord God formed every animal of the field and every bird of the air and brought them to the man to see what he would call them. And whatever man called every living creature, that was his name. The man gave names to all the cattle and to all the birds of the air and to every animal of the field. But for the man, there was none that was found that could be his partner. So this God created every bird, animal, everything that would include the serpent was created according to Genesis 2 after the Garden of Eden was set up. That was a weird sound. After the Garden of Eden was set up. And so then when you go to 3, it says, now the serpent was more crafty than any other animal that the Lord God had made. So it even restates that this God had made the serpent. So the serpent wasn't part of any council, any divine council prior to the creation of Adam and what's in the garden, according to this story. All right. So you can't claim, so that kind of disrupts, that disrupts the idea that this serpent and this devil who fought against the God, the angel who fought against God before the creation of the earth, that they are one and the same. They are not one and the same. This God, if the war in heaven is real, and mind you, you're getting your belief in the war in heaven from the books of Enoch, right? The books of Enoch is where you get this war in heaven as far as a biblical reference to it. They would have gotten the idea of a war in heaven also from the Canaanite and Sumerians, because Enlil and Enki, they had two factions that fought one another, especially when it came to Marduk fighting Enlil for supremacy over Earth. And so an idea of a war of heaven was present before the books of Enoch, but it is the books of Enoch that gives a biblical, where the biblical people get their understanding of it. But in either way, this war happens before the creation of Adam. All right. So, but the serpent clearly is described as being created in the time frame of after Adam was created. See, I think people don't listen. You saying serpent is not an animal. How can you say that serpent is now not an animal? Now the serpent was more crafty than any other wild animal that the Lord God had made. And he had made all these beasts and animals right after he told Adam not to eat from the tree. Now I know what you're probably gonna say. I'm gonna help you out. You then gonna say, because I'm gonna be devil's advocate to my own statement. Now the serpent was more crafty than any other wild animal that the Lord had made. See, that ain't saying that the serpent was made by God, but the serpent was a more craftier than any of the animals that Adam would have been talking to, because obviously these animals can talk. But that's not saying that he was of the wild animals, but that he was just more crafty than the other wild animals. So I guess the other wild animals could talk and they were crafty as well. See how that opens that door up? So that don't work either. So I've heard the argument before, and the argument just don't stand up. And just as a little thing, for the overwhelming majority of the things that I look at what the opposite thought could be. It's not that I just run with whatever my first thought is. I look at what's an opposing thought, and does that opposing thought have value? And to say that the serpent was not one of the animals that was created in Genesis 2 and re-talked about in Genesis 3, that argument doesn't stand. To say that they are one and the same doesn't stand, right? So it just doesn't work. What do you think about Jackie? Huh? Who the hell is Jack? You might not be talking to me. You might be talking to somebody else. But I don't know who Jackie is. I didn't say anything about Jackie. Yeah, and to me, when you read his book, like what Kevin Willis is saying on Facebook, once the animals started talking, you should have went like, huh? This is some bullshit. That's what he said. And right, there's no war in heaven in the Tanakh. It's not because but here's what's funny is that Enoch is quoted in the New Testament, and I think he's quoted in the Old Testament as well, but yet the book is not part of their canons. But it's quoted because at the time frame of that person's writing, it was considered scripture. It was considered for. I think some of y'all just like to argue. I wouldn't even waste my time arguing with some of these people that y'all are out here arguing with. Oh, so when you said, what about, somebody said, what about Jackie? I don't have. Oh, so y'all, I thought y'all might have been talking. Somebody's talking to somebody else. The Christians have deep work to do before they convince you to Jesus Christ. Yeah, nearly impossible work in order to convince me over to Jesus. Yeah. And this is from someone who was head over heels in love with Jesus back in my youth and into my young adulthood and into my 30s. I was all in love with Jesus. Although I will admit, I came to people with a hell of a lot better intellectual, debatable information than what I see from the Christians that I get on here. Even when I was looking at the more mystic, and I was moving into the more mystic side of Christianity, I would never try some of the arguments these people are taking. Okay, and see this is what I would never have done. I was waiting on Rupert to respond to it. You're taking the serpent for a literal animal. Now the serpent was more crafty than any of the other wild animals that the Lord God had made. This is saying the serpent is one of the wild animals. The wild animals that in the previous chapter was brought before Adam to name. You see, when you got a mind already set on something, you can't see the forest for the trees because you get stuck in it having to fit. Because I've determined that the serpent is the devil, I got to make it fit that he's not one of the animals that was created, that he wasn't a wild animal, that he got to be something different. So I'm going to ignore the fact that he's referred to as one of the other wild animals. Oh man. So it's amazing to me. It's amazing to me. The level of how the indoctrinated mind works. And it's actually disturbing because there was a point in time of my life that I was that indoctrinated. But I was willing to challenge myself. I was willing to challenge myself to it. Isn't human animal? We understand humans are animals today, but at the time frame when they were writing, they didn't have the classifications in the same way that we do. So they didn't see humans as being animals. So when they was writing this, they would not have referred to humans as animals. But the other aspect of that, is that according to their writings at this time, Adam was the only damn person on the planet. So he wouldn't, Adam was named by God. So there would be no reason for Adam to have to look in the mirror to name himself, and there would have not been any other humans, according to Genesis chapter 2, to bring to Adam so that he could name them. So that statement is irrelevant, and it's grasping. You're grasping right there on that one, right? You cannot infuse how you think today and place it on the people who was writing the book at that time frame. It doesn't work that way. Thank you, Donald, a member. So those who support the channel through membership, I appreciate you. Subscription holders, thank you very much. Those who give gifts on TikTok and super chats on YouTube and what's the thing? Donate to the cigar fund. Appreciate it. How was the concept of the Garden of Eden came? You know, Donald, you know I'm gonna pick on you about that sentence structure right there. You must be driving or something, because Donald don't usually write poorly. How was concept of Garden of Eden came? I'm sorry, y'all. I gotta pick on Donald because Donald don't normally write like that. He probably using talking text. Okay, so since he's a member, you know, and everything, and of course, if you donate something, I'm definitely going to respond to your questions. That would be rude not to. But how was the concept of the Garden of Eden created? Is how I'm going to understand what you're saying, right? So if you are thinking about the fact that these people came from the Canaanites and they would have known the Canaanite stories, they would have known the Sumerian story as well. Well, within that Sumerian story, there is the idea of, and you've heard this before, you know this, Donald. You know the story of Enlil and Enki, the two brothers always fighting getting into arguments with each other. But Enki wants to experiment with these humans, and so these humanoids, and so he convinced the Igigi to revolt and have a union strike. And I'm giving you the long version here. Have a union strike, and with that union strike, the gold production stops because they're supposedly need gold for their medicines and for fixing the atmosphere. Enki then says, hey, I know we've outlawed slavery, but we can create these man animals and they can be clones, and we can have them mine the gold as well as serve us, and we can live a life of luxury. So Enlil, Enki, Ninharsag, and Anu say, yeah, that's the heavenly council at that time frame. Say, yeah, let's do this. And so they experiment with mixing Anunnaki blood with human blood, human genomes, and then they use Ninharsag as an incubator, and they produce 16 versions of man. When they finally get one that works out, which is Adapa and Titi, they place them in the enclosure or the Garden of Eden, but it's really the term. It's really spoken as enclosure. Thank you for the lightning bolt. Eden, and in that garden, so that's where the Garden of Eden is established. Now, in the Sumerian, it didn't have all the 4 rivers and all that kind of stuff. But as the story grows through the Akkadians, grows through the Canaanites, and then these Israelites get that story. But of course, the Genesis version of the story is not even written down to like the 600s, 500s BCE. Now that's how they created the Adam and Eve in the garden. But it's basically the Garden of Eden in Chaldea that was in the Sumerian story. So, and Donald, you know that story. I don't need. You know that story. But yeah, so and that's what we have to realize. These stories are nothing but stacked on stacked on stacked on stacked. Like, you don't start a new religion just out of nowhere. If you try that, it's going to fail for the most part. What you do is that you start a new religion built on a previous religion, and you add spins and twists to it to fit a more modern time and to make it seem like you have uh, fulfilled some of the unfulfilled things of that old religion in order to start your new religion. This is how all the different Christian cults came about. This is how all the different Christian denominations came about. This is how Christianity came about. This is how Islam came about. Judaism did nothing more than stand on the Canaanite rituals and Canaanite thoughts and religion, and the Canaanites stood on the Sumerian Akkadian religions. The question we really need to find out is, where in the hell did they get their stories from? Right? So I would love to, that would be, and somebody would like try to say something because I said these Dead Sea Scrolls was an amazing discovery. Of course, archaeologically, it's an amazing discovery because we get to know how people thought in a different time frame, where we have no video, we have no, we don't have a movie about it that they made at their time frame. We get to understand how people thought, how people lived. It's, I would say the Dead Sea Scrolls are just as important as the 250 plus thousand tablets we found in Nineveh. And the overwhelming majority of those tablets in Nineveh are talking about, oh, I sold him 50 bushels of barley and he gave me a cow in payment. Like, that's amazing. So you can say, okay, the value of a cow, and actually I think it says a goat though, really. But the value of a goat, and the goat's value is 50 bales of barley. Like, you can understand their economics, how they live. Those things I find fascinating. And see, this is stupid. Now, I know y'all can't see it over here on TikTok. I just expressed that we found over 250,000 tablets in Nineveh that lets us know, that's written in cuneiform, that lets us know not only the religious story, but the lifestyle of the people in Nineveh prior to these Israelites and all this stuff, prior to the Bible. And this person, Fred Adams, because there's a Fred Jones, and I would not disrespect the Fred Jones by just saying Fred, says, where are the books of these people, sir? There is a disconnect in the brain of a believer, right? There has to be a disconnect. Because if I just said where the information is that we know about these stories, if we know about how the Sumerians, the Sumerian religion, the Akkadian religion, we know about the Canaanite religion from these tablets, why in the three levels of hell would you ask, where are the books of these people? So then what you do is you go and you research the people who have translated the cuneiform tablets to give you an understanding of what it says, right? And this fool is still saying you gave us name, not books. Why is he so stuck on the word books? They wrote, we got 250,000 tablets. Okay, so let me help you out a little bit more, Fred. Go to Google Scholar or Academia EDU and type in translations of tablets in Nineveh in reference to the creation of man. Yeah, that'll be a good start off question. Translations of the tablets in Nineveh in reference to the creation of man. Now, in order to get the Google Scholar, go to Google, type in Google Scholar. It will bring up a thing where you can click on. It'll highlight Google Scholar. Then you click on Google Scholar. It'll switch. It'll look like regular Google, but it'll say Google Scholar above the top. Good Lord. And please don't do that, because one of the most irritating things is you keep on asking for a goddamn book. Oh, man. All right, we got another person. Charlie, since my Facebook and YouTube people don't want to come on. Charlie is coming over here. Charlie, are you over 21?
Yes.
All right. Are you a believer?
No.
Okay. All right. Just for reference, atheist or agnostic or what?
Don't believe at all.
Okay, atheist. Got it. All right. So your thought process on the idea that believers have concerning a good God being a creator of hell.
I feel like the fact that people believe in, I feel like the fact that Jesus swept all the people away in the river was a horrible act, and I feel like he was.
Wait, Jesus swept everybody away in the river. I know I dog out some of these Christian-minded people, but that was just what the. Sometimes I wonder. This is why I want to go. Humans. Welcome to the show. What's your name?
Hey.
What's your name?
My name is John.
All right, John. You over 21?
What's good?
You blinked out. I ain't hear nothing that you said. Are you over 21?
Yeah.
All right. And you a believer or not?
Sometimes I am, sometimes I'm not.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are you right now?
Me, I'm in Arizona right now.
No, I said, what are you right now? You said sometimes you're a believer, sometimes you're not.
Oh, I'm agnostic.
Okay. So do you believe in a God right now?
Yeah.
Okay. Is that God a good God, a bad God, or a mixture of both?
No, he's a good guy, yeah.
So did that good God create hell?
I don't think anyone created God.
I said, did that good God create hell?
Yeah, I think so.
So how is he a good God if he creates a place of eternal torment?
Because some people deserve it.
So a good God would say that you deserve eternal hell. For what reason would you deserve eternal hell?
For sins such as cussing, like, I don't know.
Really?
Well,
so you think a person curses and they deserve to go to hell?
nah, like killing someone, I think.
Is it what?
Like killing someone.
Okay. What about if a person doesn't believe that that God exists? Do they deserve hell?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and let you go.
No.
Yeah, that's just ridiculous. That was definitely a waste of my time. I think I'm getting the trolls today, as somebody said earlier.
I'm not a troll.
I know. I was about to bring you up, but then I saw that you stood up, and I was like, "Well, no."
You look hesitant. I know. I don't blame you.
But no,
I'm not a troll though.
For you, you stood up.
Oh yeah.
And I saw was your shirt, and I said, "Well, let me see if you're finna go somewhere or you're gonna sit back down."
Yeah, I was just trying to straighten up my setup up here. So
I'm looking at the grade. I'm sure you're over 21.
I am.
And are you a believer?
I am.
Okay, Carlos. So the question today is, do you believe, so you believe your God created hell?
I don't think hell is a necessarily a place. I believe it's an event. I believe in the right interpretation of hell doesn't lead you to the conclusion that it's an actual geographical location. It's more of an event. The Bible says that God is a consuming fire.
Mhm.
Multiple times throughout the verses, you'll hear that uh, being in the presence of the Lord, right, is like a refiner's fire. He is a consuming fire, a devouring fire, right? Many scriptures affirm this. I believe that hell is simply being in the presence of God and not being made right by Him.
Hell is being in the presence of God, but not being made right.
Yes, yes, and there's actual scripture. I have scriptures that, if you'd like, I can share with you to affirm that. And I wanna
Only
challenge.
the only thing about sharing scriptures is that if you're trying to preach, we're not preaching and we're not proselytizing.
Okay, well, I just wanted to establish that the Bible does not support an eternal torment in hell. Like there's scriptures that clearly uh, state that the wicked will be burned like stubble. They will be devoured by this fire. They will be consumed like chaff. There's a lot of language that, see, the thing is that the two verses that kind of seem to imply that the smoke of their torment shall rise forever and ever seem, off the surface, seem to imply that this place will burn the people in it for eternity. That is not who the God of the Bible is. That is a misinterpretation. In fact, that is a doctrine devised by the Pope of Rome. Um, it is not the proper interpretation of hell. It's not what hell is.
So when the Bible says that those whose name is not found in the book of life will be thrown into the lake of fire to be tormented forever, as well as the beast and the beast disciples, it says tormented forever.
Yes, this is figurative language. So it also says that Sodom and Gomorrah uh would be devoured by eternal fires, and the fire will never be quenched. With Jonah, when
Okay.
talking about Jonah,
So I can see those as being figurative languages for that time frame, for what they was writing at that time frame. But what the Revelations is speaking of is after the whole War of Megiddo is done, the return of Jesus, the seals and vials and bowls, that this is the it. This is eternity after we have existed on this planet. That, to take the figurative speech about Sodom and Gomorrah and place that then in Revelations, I find that to be kind of intellectually dishonest, personally.
well, it's the same language. Like if you compare these instances where the language is figurative, and then it literally, like, so everything that happens in Revelations, right, all that language in Revelations is from the old, almost direct quotes from the Old Testament. The fire will never be quenched, eternal fire. This is not new language exclusive to Revelation. This type of language is used in the Old Testament, and it's used to refer to places and instances, events where we know that they were not used in a literal sense. Now, aside from that, right? Aside from that, I have there are verses which you never hear because it doesn't support this. The mainstream narrative that hell burns people for eternity, but there's actual literal quotes where it says that the wicked shall be no more. So we have a problem here, right? We have literal verses that say that the wicked will be burnt like stubble and they will be no more, and then we have literal verses that would say, hey, you're going to burn for eternity here. So the Bible's made in a way that language needs to be discerned,
Right.
um
Not only must language be discerned, but also the culture, the politics, and the time frame must also be discerned within that as well. And Um, when you're talking about things that was written about Sodom and Gomorrah, they are not speaking in the same voice as the people who are speaking about Revelations. These are distinct people with distinct different cultures over the time frame. And and when I say that, think about it like this. If you tried to compare American culture in the 1920s to American culture in the 2020s, those two cultures are very different, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So, and that's just 100 years. So you can't honestly take a culture that's writing in 500s BCE and compare that to be the same culture that's writing in 100 BC, in 100 CE. We got 600 years in time difference, right?
Yeah.
So to try to say that they're speaking in one voice, it doesn't happen. It doesn't work. And especially what you just kind of demonstrated is how the ideas of hell and afterlife matured or changed over this course of time,
Changed according to who?
according to its own writings within itself. Like the first the BCE era of Judaism, they
Right.
didn't believe, their thought was if you died, like you said, you just cease to exist.
That's what you know. What I hold that position. I don't believe in a soul that flies off to heaven or fly or goes down. When we die, the Bible says, when we die, we return to the dust where we came from, and the breath of life, what animates the body, that which is not the consciousness, that breath returns to God who gave it. That's in Ecclesiastes. So I don't hold your mainstream view.
Right.
I don't think. Yeah.
So you cease to exist. So, but
Yeah.
Revelation speak differently. Revelations is given that you continue to exist with your consciousness. Those who are found to be in the book of life, they go and they live in the New Jerusalem or in heaven with this God. Those who are not found in the book of life, they are thrown into this lake of fire.
So look. This is a very popular verse, right? And we miss this so easily, right? Jesus gives us the two results to this whole conclusion here, right? He says in John 3:16, and for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whoever believes in him shall not, in one hand, we have perish.
Hmm.
In the other hand, we have eternal life. So right
Right.
there, he gives you the two end results. He's like, look, on one hand, your final conclusion would be to perish. Now, that's a very specific word. Perish means to cease to be. You're annihilated. You are done. Now, perish does not mean eternal torment in a lake of fire. That's clear. He's in one hand, he's holding eternal life. In the other hand, he's holding
Mhm.
death, eternal death, existence,
Mhm.
lights out, the
Gotcha.
long one. Yeah,
Gotcha. Yes.
yeah,
Absolutely. Which is why I don't, you might not have been on here earlier when I was saying that at this concept, when I was, so in the beginning, I gave about 30 minutes of breaking down how the different thought processes of afterlife and hell were developed. And when in the New Testament, in the Gospels, which are supposed to be the recordings of Jesus, you don't have anything that would suggest a hell. It is the only hell that is suggested is in Revelations, which is being written by John of Patmos, almost possibly up to a century after the Jesus character supposedly lived and died. Now,
when you say a hell, you're referring to hell in what context? The lake of fire or the grave? The
lake of
lake
fire.
of fire.
In Revelations, hell is the lake of fire, which is the modern day concept that most people have about hell. So,
Yeah.
and it is distinctively different from anything that is said in the Gospels, and way different than anything that is said in the Old Testament.
Well, you know that about 60% of the revelations are almost direct quotes from the Old Testament. For
And
example,
some of them are
let me,
wrong.
huh?
And sometimes they quote it wrong, like in Mark.
Yeah, yeah. They're not word for word, but the for example, Isaiah 34, right? It shall not be quenched night or day, and the smoke shall go up forever, right? That language is used, that almost word for word is used in Revelations, and that's actually an old quote. That's actually sanctuary language from the Old Testament, you know? So, yeah, upon surface reading and listening to your pastors and not investigating what this book really says will lead you to the conclusion, that yes, God burns people for eternity. God is triune, the Trinity, right? That's another uh
Well,
deception.
and I did have to look up something that you said because I wasn't 100% sure, but I didn't want to say it without knowing.
Yeah.
And then you said, what was your definition of perish?
Perish,
Mm-hmm.
uh to die, basically, to be annihilated, to cease to exist.
Okay, so the definition of perish means to suffer death, typically in a violent, sudden, and ultimate untimely way, suffer complete ruin or destruction. I mean, I can see how you are maybe suggesting that don't you cease to exist,
Is that a biblical definition?
but it doesn't necessarily. No, this is just the Oxford Dictionary.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah, I think the Hebrew, I think when checking these words, modern translations might not, they probably might not be consistent with what the author intended in their original languages,
okay.
you
So
know.
in a biblical context, to perish means to be destroyed, ruined, lost, or put out of the way, but it does not necessarily mean to cease to exist. The Greek word apolumi, often translated to perish in the New Testament, carries connotations of ruin or loss, particularly in reference to eternal life or well-being. The Hebrew word abad in the Old Testament implies perish, destruction, or loss. So it may not necessarily mean complete
Then I guess the question would be, how do we define destruction? How do we define destruction? I guess would be the next question. But given without having to get very tedious about the actual definitions, the Bible itself will give you the illustration. Will paint the full picture of what hell is, and it's pretty clear. I mean, when you have all the pieces of the puzzle in front of you, it's quite clear. You have verses like in Jude 1:13, it says, "For who is reserved blackness of darkness forever?" Right. So, you know,
you can you,
why
to
why would we not take this literal? Says Ezekiel 28:19, Satan will be no more, in those exact words. The wicked will be no more, Psalms 37:10. Nahum 1:10, devoured as stubble, fully dry. These are the end results of it all. So
but
the idea,
but
yeah,
then Revelation goes against all of that. You see,
right.
the problem is you can't. The Bible does not speak with one voice. You say pieces of the puzzle, put them together, you see the picture. That would be if it did speak with one voice. But because of the differences, because yeah, everything you read sounds nice, sounds nicely packed, right? Until you go to Revelations 19 and 20, and the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet that wrought miracles before him, and which he deceived them and had received the mark of the beast, and them that worship his image. These were cast alive into the lake of fire, burning with brimstone.
Yeah.
So they're being cast into this fire. So there is no annihilation. They're being thrown in there. So the defeat of the Satan devil to be annihilated is just simply not there.
Yeah, I mean, if we take it literal, if we literally, if we literally interpret this as God is picking them up and tossing them into a lake that is fire, then we will get to those kind of conclusions.
But
This
you're
is
taking
the
you're
very
taking
first,
their annihilation as
huh?
literal. But you're taking the Old Testament
Yeah,
annihilation as literal. You see what
I
I'm
am.
saying? You can't take, so you're taking one literal and you're taking another one, what, metaphorically?
That is how the Bible has to be interpreted.
If you wanted to fulfill a certain
And,
narrative.
and it lets you know, the Bible actually lets you know when the language is figurative. For example, right, when Lazarus was dead, right, his buddy Lazarus was dead in the tomb. He had been dead for 4 days, right?
Mhm.
The disciples asked, we wish you would have gotten here earlier, right? But he's dead now for 4 days. And Jesus says, don't worry about Lazarus. Lazarus is just sleeping, right?
Mhm.
Now, clearly he's been dead 4 days. This is not a literal use of the word sleep, right? Because when he gets there, Jesus himself affirms what he really means is that Lazarus is dead. So he lets you, so he reveals to you. So all throughout the Bible, because all throughout the Bible, people referred to who are dead are referred to as being sleep, right?
Right.
But it's interprets, if you when you investigate these terms, you'll find out that there are some that are figurative and sometimes it's literal.
Okay, but you're taking the one word that they use to describe a person who is dead as figurative and putting that over the whole thing, right?
Over what whole thing? The hell thing
Yeah,
also?
you're taking sleep and making the fact that that's a figurative way of expressing a person's condition when they're dead, and
Right?
you're putting that over the whole thing. Now that sleep was also supposed to be a state of being until the day of judgment. So they meant sleep literally that you are without consciousness and sleeping and not knowing what's going on around you
I
until the
agree.
day of judgment. So they still meant sleep in a literal sense of how you are when you are asleep. Because like when you sleep, you don't know what's going on around the world, right?
Right. And I agree with that. But
So it's not just
it is still figurative because
it's
Lazarus wasn't sleeping.
it's also, but it's a figurative way of expressing a literal thought, a literal situation that they
And
believe in.
that's my point. That happens in Revelations a lot. That is precisely my point.
But that is not what's happening in Revelations 19:20. It may happen somewhere else in Revelations, but
So
Revelations 19:20 is saying that this is what's going to happen to the beast, and
the
everybody's
very
going
first the very first verse of Revelations tells us that it's a symbolic book. The very first verse. It lets you know, hey, before you even get into it, it lets you know, look, this book is signified. And if you look at the Greek for that word, you'll see that it means somewhat a symbolic, encrypted type language, which is obvious, right? Because there is no literal beast, right? There isn't a beast with 7 heads, right? Like we know that all this stuff is symbolic, so we know we have to use discernment that this and all of that stuff.
But see, that's the problem. You see the finite words that you're using. We know that all these things are symbolic. So the rivers turning into blood, symbolic. Not really going to happen. The river Euphrates drying up, symbolic. Not going to happen.
Well, so we need to know to discern what is symbolic and what is not symbolic.
You just said everything in Revelation is symbolic because it
Well,
tells you
that would
that.
be no. I said, well, the vast majority is not every single thing, and the things that are symbolic are uh, revealing a reality.
Okay,
Through
so
symbolism, real realities are being revealed. So yeah, it does take some discernment to navigate through there and figure what out what's. I mean, here's the thing, right? Because here's a stark contradiction right here, right? Because God says, "Love your enemies," right? Jesus says, "Love your enemies." So would it make sense that that same God who just told you to love your enemies would turn around and fry his for eternity? 6 billion years go by and he's just getting started. I
I
mean,
would
there's
say the God of
obviously
the
a
Bible is a
contradiction there,
hypocrite.
huh?
The God of the Bible is a straight up hypocrite. He gives laws and rules for the people, but then goes and breaks those very same ones himself all the time in this book. So yeah, it is very appropriate in the behavior of this God to say, hey, love your enemies, but then he goes and tells the people, hey, instead, since the Canaanites are your enemy, now don't love them, genocide them. So this guy is a walking contradiction.
Well, bad interpretations will definitely lead to that conclusion.
But because that is the interpretation. That it's not
I
even,
don't.
well, it's not even an interpretation. It's what happens. See, I think that's part of the problem with people who, when they read this Bible and try to make it fit their narrative, is that you want it to go somewhere and you refuse to accept where it actually leads you. So, like, you're trying to make Revelation, this lake of fire, symbolic, but the information concerning it leads to this is what they're saying is going to happen, right?
You're basing that's based off of a handful of verses. You see, look, this right here, there's about 100 verses here. All these verses paint the picture. It's the full picture of what and who hell is. Because it's not just a what, it's a who. Hell's an actual person.
That
But I don't want to preach. Like you said, I don't want to preach on your channel.
We're not going to do that.
So
but
I'll spare you from that. But
the same way you can make that claim is the same way people take the works of Nostradamus and they collect pieces here, pieces there, and they say, oh, he predicted Hitler. He predicted 9/11. He predicted, and he didn't. He made a bunch of vague prophecies and people pieced them together to fit a narrative that they want. You effectively took a bunch of narratives that have some similarities and made them fit and decided which parts are going to be figurative and which parts are not going to be figurative.
Yeah, I won't deny people do that. I agree with you. People do that, and I've done that. I've been guilty of reading into the scriptures a bit myself.
Right. So when it says in Revelations 20 that after the great white throne and all that stuff, that the people, the seas will give up their dead and the graves will give up their dead, and they will be judged according to their works, and the death, and they'll be cast into a lake of fire. The death and hell were cast into the lake of fire. This is the second death, and whosoever
think about that
was cast into a lake of fire.
That very term itself. How do you cast death into a lake? So you see that this is figurative language. How do you cast death? Can you throw death anywhere? Death can't be thrown. It's figurative language.
The concept of death is thrown into this lake of fire because according to this story, when you go and live in this heavenly kingdom, there will be no more death. So then death has to be separated from where everybody else is. Where the people who made it in, whose name is in the book of life, death has to be separated so that they can live forever, right?
I grant that.
And then here again, you're taking the one word death and trying to say that, but you're ignoring that it's saying that all these people who have died in these different places, different times, and those who were alive, but the main thing here is that their name is not in the book of life, you're cast into the lake of fire. So that means that if you don't believe, which would keep you out of the book of life, you are thrown into the lake of fire.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I agree with that in its context that you're putting it in. Like I said, there is discernment. Like death, we obviously cannot cast death into anything. So what does he mean? Like when he says cast death into a lake, right? There's obviously a message within this language here that's not so evident, that's not so clear.
Well, I think it's very clear because it's not relatable to, and it doesn't relate to any of the older Testament stuff. It is clear that if you already established that in this new kingdom, this new Jerusalem, this new heaven, there's going to be no death, then the concept of death, whatever the energy of death is, has to be separated from where the people who have eternal life are now going to be, because if death was still in the same realm, then they cannot have eternal life. So therefore death is cast away with these people who are going to go through this second death and be eternal in this lake of fire for eternity. So that's why, and which is also, they explain that the tree of life is going to be present in this new heaven as well, and bearing fruit in its season 12 times a year, right? Which, is written based on people who understood earthly cycles. But why is the tree of life necessary?
So why is the tree of life for the healing of the people?
Yeah, the tree of life is supposed to be in this heaven. And so the tree of life is, so at first it's confusing. Why is the tree of life there? Because you have to have access to the tree of life in order to have eternity, because they believe that you will get a new body when you go to this heaven.
Well, the verse says for the healing of the nations is what it says.
Okay, but okay, so you go by that verse for the healing of the nations, because the different people will be there.
Yeah.
All right, so that's the reason why it's there. So take that same logical approach and say, why is death cast into the lake of fire? Because if death was still available, then you cannot have the healing of the nations, because people would still have issues and fear of death and concerns of death, and then that would cause division amongst the nations. Because death is very divisive, if you really think about it, of how we function as societies today. We make laws to try to prevent death as much as we can. We create medicines to try to prevent death. We try to engineer food and all this other thing. We hoard things to try to prevent death, right?
Yeah.
And that is one of the bases of a lot of the disruption that we have in this world. I'm assuming you live in America, right?
I do.
Okay. America has enough food to feed the world. But because of our own selfish concerns, we will let people die to make sure we have enough to keep living. We build all kind of armament to make sure we can stay safe and not die while
You think
other people. So
I think
death is very powerful.
Yeah.
So
I would agree. I would agree that selfishness, that would be a cause of selfishness. But I would say it goes a little deeper than just selfishness. I would go that there's actually a satanic agenda behind starving communities and the displacement and the genocide of entire ethnicities. But that's a whole nother
that's a whole nother thing, and I don't believe Satan exists. But just so when you go back to the thought process, you can't have a place of a healed nations, a place of eternal life, a place of no suffering, and death is still there. So that's why death has to be cast into this lake of fire as well, to eliminate what would be a problem in the heavens, in the new heaven.
Okay, so I agree with that. I think it's a little short of the final results, because it does say, we do have verses that say that death will be no more. There will be no more death. There will be no more suffering at all. It doesn't say in heaven or hell. It just says there will be all this would come to an end.
Right. And let me show you how the Bible doesn't speak with univocality when it concerns that. Because in Ezekiel, when Ezekiel describes a new Jerusalem, and this is people, they try to make it seem like it's the same as what's going on in Revelations and in the apocalyptic writings of the Gospels. But Ezekiel says that babies won't die early, and if a man dies before he's 100, then that will be a shame. But people still are going to die. It's just that you won't die until you pass 100. So even in Ezekiel's version of a new heaven and this reign of God, there's still death.
Yeah, I know what verse you're talking about. I was actually just discussing that with somebody the other day.
So the univocality is not there.
Yeah, it's a matter of that. That's it. It's really about discerning the language. I understand that when I could find a lot of verses that they contradict and they do this. I've investigated for myself enough to see that the things that the book, the way that this how would you say it? It layers the Old Testament, and they are weaved together, and really in a way that I've never seen any other book do. That would be, part of the reason why I am convinced that these words are divinely inspired. Yeah, with a few isolated verses here and there, we could come to conclusions that are raise some questions, and seem to contradict. And I agree. There's verses in there I don't understand, and they seem to contradict. But I've seen a lot more of it falling together really well. And when a lot of times when I have had these verses that don't seem to make sense and seem to contradict, within time, given enough time, it is revealed what its meaning is, and why it seems to contradict. I mean,
That sounds like, okay. If you recognize that they contradict each other, then that could not be the divinely inspired word of this God. And it sounds like if I give myself enough time, I can force a narrative that makes these contradictions not contradict. But there are, it comes down, it will come down to confirmation bias or it comes
and
down
I'll
to
be honest.
because
That's usually the case.
yeah, because there are contradictions within the Bible that there is no way to rationalize them unless you just say, I don't give a damn. And I'm just going to accept whatever wild theories that somebody got out there. For instance, like when we talked about on Monday, I believe it was Monday, where I talked about the fact that there is absolutely no way that the birth of Jesus according to Luke and the birth of Jesus according to Matthew are the same, that they are distinctively different. In Luke, Jesus was born in 6 CE. In Matthew, he had to be born no later than 4 BCE. So that is a 10-year difference of the birth of Jesus. You cannot reconcile that in any form or fashion, nor can you reconcile the fact that Matthew says that they went to Egypt right after he was born, and Luke says they went to Jerusalem and then back to Galilee right after they was born. There's no way to reconcile those things. Unless you just, I don't care, I'm just going to. The main Christian thing to say is the only thing that matters is that he was born.
I mean, I would invest. Me personally, I like to investigate these things. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And as far as a book that works so well weaved in with each other, that doesn't mean it is divinely inspired. That just means it was well written and has been well copied. Because for the same thing that you say about that, just like the gentleman earlier that I was saying, read the Tao Te Ching. You go read the Tao Te Ching, it flows in perfect.
The who?
The Tao.
What is that, Hindu?
No, it's Taoism.
Oh, yeah, I don't know much about that.
If you read the Tao Te Ching, it's only 81 sayings. It flows perfectly from verse 1 to verse 81. There's no contradictions throughout the entire thing. It is all perfect. And so if a perfect correlated writing, which was written few hundred years before Christianity, flows so perfectly, should that not then be divinely inspired? If that's
I mean, I've never read it, so I can't speak on that. I mean, I can say this. I can say that I've seen prophecy fulfilled before my very eyes with this Bible. You know what I mean? And very clear. I mean, if I could show you right now a prophecy that's been fulfilled, and it's provable, and it's easy to you know easy to interpret, quite easy, and
you realize that a Muslim can claim the same thing about the Quran.
Yeah,
A Hindu
I
can
know
claim
some
the
of their
same thing
claims.
about the Bhagavad Gita's.
Oh, but this is an accurate prophecy here. This one is not your vague, abstract.
Okay.
No, this pins down an individual.
Let's take this journey, and then I'm gonna let Stumpy Nubs.
Okay. So let's go to Revelation 13:18. And All right, this here.
Revelations 13.
18.
Why did my
Right.
version switch on me? Hold on, my version switched on me and it switched to the worst version. 13 and 18. 18. This calls for wisdom. Let anyone with understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a person. His number is 666.
Yeah. Right. So,
You sure you want to go down there?
man, 100%. It won't take long either. I'm going to spell this out here really quick. So, the Pope of Rome, when his position was established, right? His title, his original title was vicarious, right? Philly, Filii, Dei, Dei. It will be spelled just like this right here. Vicarious, Philly, Dei. Okay?
Mhm.
That is the original language that the Pope's position was established in, right? So the
Uh-huh.
verse says, calculate the numbers, and the numbers is 666. So you know that the Roman language, Roman alphabet are also numbers, right? You
Mhm.
know, some of them are numbers, right?
Mhm.
Well, it just so happens by some twist of fate, perhaps, that the letters that do add up, the numbers here add up to 666,
Mhm.
right? So it's identifying, it's saying that this person that it's talking about there is the Pope of Rome. Now that's only the first criteria that's
Mhm.
met there. Now,
Hold hold
from
on.
your
Because
uh-huh.
we don't actually need to go no further than that.
Okay,
All right, now I want you to roll with me, okay?
sure.
Hold that back up again. Hold the name up. I know you guys on TikTok can't see it. That's Latin, right?
That is Latin.
Okay. When you read the Codex Sinaiticus, it's written in what language?
The Codex, I believe, is Latin or I'm not sure if it's Greek.
All right, the Codex Sinaiticus. No, that's Greek. Yes. See,
Yeah.
Koine Greek, if I'm correct. Yeah, Koine Greek. In the Koine Greek is where you get the number 666. So when you look at the Latin version, which is the Vulgate is the Codex Sinaiticus written in Latin. In the Latin, Revelations 13:18 says the number is 616. So if the Pope's name that you held up is in Latin, in order for it to fit, it would have to be numbered at 616, not 666.
So you're saying that the true interpretation of that number would be 616?
In Latin.
The Pope would love that we would think that.
And
I'm
what
sure.
you just held up was in Latin. In the Greek, which is older than the Latin, because
Yeah.
Revelations was written in Greek, is 666. And you know what name matches it in Latin and in Greek?
What name is that?
Emperor Nero. His name in Greek equals 666. His name in Latin equals 616. John of Patmos was believing in the conspiracy theory that Nero wasn't really dead after he suffered his head wound, and that he would return back and retake the Roman Empire from the Flavians and persecute Christians.
Yeah. That's
So
that's all that's a horrible interpretation.
that is
Here's the
the
thing.
scholastic consensus, and and it's not even an interpretation. When the Latin, if you read a Latin Vulgate, is 616.
Yeah, I haven't delved too deep into that. I've seen a little bit. I'm not very convinced from the little I've seen. Perhaps there's something there, but like I was saying, there's a lot more criteria to be met to be the Antichrist, right? For
Okay,
example,
but we're not meeting the first criteria. You're not meeting the first one.
Well, they're not in order. They're not in order. I believe this meets. Like, what are the possibilities of a name? Because this was obviously written, way before the Pope's position was ever established, right? So what are the odds that this would get written, that this would be prophesied, and then there would be somebody that lands all the criteria that falls under this description here, which the Pope does.
Nero. They was writing about Nero. It's expressly being written about Nero.
Yeah, but here's the thing, right? Nero, you see in Daniel 7:25, this beast also is prophesied to change laws and time, right? We just happen to be, right? It says that this beast will change the laws and time. Well, we are under the Pope's calendar. The Gregorian calendar is established by the Vatican, right? Number one, it says that they will persecute the saints of the Most High. I know that Nero did that, but nobody's shed more blood than the Pope of Rome. That's what the Dark Ages was.
Okay, but
nobody's.
If you go back to changing the time, Julius Caesar changed the calendar before the church did. So you can throw Julius Caesar in there because he.
But what I'm saying, all the criteria has to fit this one person.
Well, there you go. That's why I said we can stop right there, because just in the naming, it does not fit the criteria. Just you said all the criteria. All means all,
yeah.
All means. So if the 616 and the 666 don't match, then does that fit all the criteria?
But here's the thing: the Bible says 666.
No.
That is the true translation.
So the Greek says 666,
and that is the proper.
But the Latin does not. The Latin says 616 because it is the name of Nero.
There's a reason why all the Bibles have 666 in them, because this is the true interpretation, and that was established a long time ago. People want to muddy up the waters with this 616 deal, but I mean, people that don't study this well know that that's not the case. If not, it would be in the Bible. It would be in there.
I appreciate you just demonstrated how the confirmation bias is going to make it fit your narrative, regardless of what's presented to you. And that's faith, and I can't argue faith. And we went down that hole, and I'm going to let.
Fair enough. And I appreciate you letting me take you down through there.
Yeah. So I'm gonna bring Stumpy Nub up.
You have a great evening.
You have a good one as well.
Night, man.
All right. Hold on, Stumpy Nub. Thank you for being patient.
Yep.
You were distracting me with all your body language, by the way.
What he was saying was just funny. I mean, come on, let's be honest. I'm obviously over 21, and I am not a believer. I am more of a prover. Spinoza, does that name ring a bell?
Spinoza, isn't that the guy whose back got messed up and he wasn't supposed to be able to walk? Or I'm thinking about no, that's not. No, that's somebody else. No, I know Spinoza.
You're preaching Spinoza. Literally, what you're talking about is what he came up with in like the 13th century. He said it's all bullcrap. Hell is not real. A benevolent God could not make a place of eternal suffering. These are contradictory.
Right.
And not to mention, but energy cannot be lost at all. That's fundamental in everything in reality, in our current reality. So if energy can't be lost and energy can change in and out of different realms as it can, because ashes to ashes, dust to dust. If I die next to this tree, the tree's going to make leaves from me, so that energy gets transmuted. Exactly. Not to mention that the New Testament is a really well-written book, but it's separate from the Old Testament. And why is it so well-written? Because Josephus and the Flavians, in my understanding, in my research, I'll make it known, Josephus and the Flavians had to write themselves into creating a Jewish state. and or a way to control the Jews during the time of the Maccabees. And so when you actually learn actual history and don't rely on your preacher, you'll realize that the Bible is bullcrap and the Quran is a lie. The Bhagavad Gita did not fall from the sky. These are books that were written by men. They've caused wars. Follow if you can. That's not my words. That's the words of a great band called Corporate Avenger. So don't quote me on being that clever.
No, you have repeated things that I have said over and over again, whether we're talking about the creation of this based on the you said Flavians. I always say Flavians.
Flavians,
Yeah,
Flavians,
but yeah,
Flopians.
when you really look at it and you see how the three different people that Josephus actually wrote about, whose name was Yeshua, and one of them having a brother James, but then they don't fulfill the rest of the story. But then one of the other ones fulfill another part of the story. You can see how this, and I would bet that Philo of Alexander has something to do with it as well. Piece this book together to be able to, to be able to stop the Jewish revolts. Because what people don't realize that Vespasian was brought in to stop the Jewish revolt, because it was disrupting the Roman Empire. When you look at Vespasian's history, he defeated the Druids by destroying their story, changing their story. So now this Messianic dude who's supposed to sit on a throne, let me change the story to one that has an ethereal kingdom so that y'all will stop fighting and disrupting the Roman Empire, especially in Alexandria, Egypt, which is where they made a bunch of their money, because it always follows the money. Which is why I think Philo had to have something to do with it, and may have even.
Well, did Philo ever exist, or was he a creation of Josephus?
No, Philo existed because he was the one of the.
But you get where I'm coming from. Like, a lot of those people were created from the get-go. Like, the whole story is a story.
I know, I get what you're saying, but Philo, and then I think what is his sister Bethany. You know, his sister Bethany was the Herod Archelaus' hoe. He was Herod's little girlfriend, and also slept with Titus. So, you know, that chick was going around.
But he's a key. He's a key because
you breaking up.
Anyway, I said Titus was a key person in this because he made fishers of men during one of those revolts in Galilee.
Yeah,
and he literally stabbed people, and yeah. Anyways, I gotta roll. I appreciate your work.
All right, I appreciate you being here. Stumpy nubs.
Don't let the loving Christians. Peace out.
Peace. Y'all may not have heard everything what Stumpy Nubs was saying, but basically, because his phone kept going in and out, what Josephus recorded in the Annals of Titus during his battle at Galilee, is that Titus instructed his men, as the Galileans were coming off of their boats and trying to get to shore, to throw spears at those Galileans coming onto shore. And he writes in there that he said he told his men, "I'm gonna make you fishers of men," as they threw spears at the Galileans trying to get to shore. So there's that part right there. And then you see that in your Bible with the just a twist on the story to make it fit into the Jesus narrative. All right. And I'm going to this is going to be my last person, and then it's lunchtime, and y'all don't want me to get cranky. So, drawn from the waters.
Yes, sir. How you doing, my friend? How you doing, sir?
Doing great. No, thank you for all the lightning bolts. I don't know what that means, but I appreciate it.
No problem. I'm telling you, my brother, you speaking straight truth, so I had to, give you. But I will be very fast. I want to say this before I convert to Judaism. That's another story. I was a Pentecostal pastor.
Okay.
And you were one of the first ones that helped me go through my deconstruction. When I first saw you on YouTube, I was like, "What's this guy talking about?" Like, "Oh my God, oh my God!" But then I did my research, and you were right, man. Like in reference to Helen about Jesus, the whole thing about this virgin birth in Isaiah 7:14 is not true. I mean, the whole thing was just a mess, you know. So I want to tell you, thank you, man. That's why I came up to tell you thank you, because you helped me out. Now in the intro, there are things in Judaism, you know, that I see, but still, yet I want to tell you thank you, man. That's why.
Man, it's raining real hard outside, and there ain't no clouds in the sky.
Oh God. But let me explain this to you, my friend. The reason why I converted, you know, to Judaism was because I still needed some type of structure.
That's it.
That's it.
That's it. I get asked that a lot by people. It's like, okay, if not Christianity, then what do I go to? And I often try not to give people a place to go to other than looking within themselves.
Right.
Because I do recognize that people still have a desire to have some structure and whatnot. But we can find structure without a belief in some God, right? This is why when I do tell people to read something, I usually look at Hermetic principles, because I find structure in the Hermetic principles.
Yes, sir.
Because the Hermetic principles tells me, it basically shows you everything how the universe functions. The only thing I don't like about that one is still the idea of the all, you know.
Okay.
Still got problems with the all concept, because it's more of a Gnostic principle. And then there is a divine paradox within that. Of all is in the all, but all are not the all.
Gotcha.
Now, the thing about it is, would I be accepting of, the only thing that makes it accepting of the all in the Hermetics is the idea that it just is. It's not good, it's not bad, it just is.
Gotcha.
So there is no concept of an all good God when considering the all, because the all cannot be all good. If evil exists, then the all must have levels of evil within it, but it doesn't function as Geppettoing everybody or things in life, or it created and that's it. It's done.
That's true.
There's
I agree with you.
there's you, and then you, because all things are mental, you manifest, just like you manifest mentally your hell, your heaven right now.
Yes, sir.
If your consciousness does stay together after you leave this body, and I'm saying if, then that consciousness is going to manifest whatever it is it decides to manifest, kind of like a daydream or a lucid dream. But I understand, not gonna preach at you.
No, you're good. But something that you said was powerful, because the scripture says in Isaiah that God is good and evil, and people don't understand that concept. I'm like, oh, okay. So I think one time you talked about that as well, that God is good and evil as well in Tanakh. But how I look at Tanakh or the Old Testament, I look through the lens of their culture. That's what they thought. Mm-hmm. That's how they perceive God. But me, even though I'm Jewish now, I obey the commandments, the mitzvahs. But still, yet I understand the concept of this is how they saw God during that time. That's how I look at it. So I look at it from outside, if that makes sense. Like God is who God is, or whatever God is, he, she, whatever God is, whatever. But still, yeah, I just practice in the context of Judaism.
Okay. So let me ask you a question.
Sure.
I'm gonna ask you an easy one.
Yes, sir.
So when a woman is on her menstrual cycle, do you touch anything that she touches? Sit on anything she sits on? Anything? Yeah. Is everything she touch unclean?
Well, okay. Let me explain that part. So the women in my life, they don't come around. They stay because they're Jewish. So when that happens, they don't come around when that menstrual cycle.
Okay. All right. All right.
Tell me to be honest with you.
All right, you got that one. You got that one. All right. So when you do break one of the laws, do you sacrifice an animal?
No, sir, because I think that's a misconception. And I know you know this. You know, he was probably being rhetorical, but in Judaism, there is no temple, so we can't sacrifice. And sacrificial offers were optional according to Psalms 40:6, and also according to Leviticus the 4th chapter. It was for unintentional sins, not for intentional sins.
Okay.
So we can sacrifice, and then also tzedakah, charity, replace sacrifice as well. So okay,
charities replace sacrifice. You know that's some modernization bullshit, right? Because that's some modernizational bullshit for one. Because you know we ain't grew up. If we grew up agrarian and all that, y'all be still sacrificing some animals. Now, as far as the temple part, I want you to go and look at the history of it.
Okay.
Hezekiah, down through Josiah, pulled a slick maneuver. Slick as hell.
Yes, sir.
Prior to the Assyrian conquest in the 700s BCE,
yes, sir,
every city had their own temples, and every city and people were doing their sacrifice of atonements, their sacrifices during the festivals and the rituals, because not all of sacrifices got something to do with sin, but sacrificing during the rituals and the festivals. Every city did their own. Now, once the Assyrians conquered every northern city other than Jerusalem, Hezekiah said, I'm going to make it where all sacrifices got to come to Jerusalem. So he did that as a power play, taking advantage of the situation that every other city had lost their temple. So that's a Hezekiah rule down to Josiah. That ain't got nothing to do, because in Exodus and what's the other one? In the Tanakh. In the Tanakh, all the way up through what's his damn name? Joshua. Thank you. Joshua. All the way up through Joshua, they are building temples. Matter of fact, Joshua get mad at the Danites because they took some old body temple and tried to refurbish it instead of just building their own new temple. So don't give me the temple ain't built. We can't do it because of the temple. There was never supposed to be a centered temple in order to do it. Right?
I agree with you. You're absolutely correct.
So
you're right.
I want to see some bloodletting going on. You're gonna do some blood, some sacrifice. You see what I'm saying?
But my brother, now to push back a little bit, now in Leviticus 4, it does state that if you don't have an animal sacrifice, you could bring in flour. So
yeah,
it wasn't that, and then in Jeremiah,
you can bring some flour. Well, hold on, wait, before you go there.
Yeah.
Can you afford to go buy some animals?
So what now?
Can you afford to go buy some animals?
No, I mean.
Can you afford? You don't.
I can.
All right, so that part that talks about if you don't have an animal sacrifice, it was because they was talking about if you're so poor, then you can use that.
That's true.
You ain't that poor. You ain't that poor.
I agree with you. I agree with you on that part.
You're not that poor.
That's true. But like I said, that was for unintentional sin, though.
You know what? I'm gonna leave you alone. I'm gonna leave you alone.
I enjoy talking to you. You are so smart, man. You're brilliant. Like, you have a mind like it's out of this world, my brother. Like, for real.
I appreciate it. It ain't true, but I appreciate it.
No, it's true. Thank you so much, man.
All right, I appreciate you, man.
Yes, sir.
All right. So we're having our meetup here in San Antonio before I go. See, why can't the folks who start, like the black people who start worshiping, start turning into, they go over to Judaism? Why can't they be pleasant like him? Why the other ones got to be so angry? See, that's why I can appreciate him. That's why I can joke with him, because he wasn't all angry and shit like them other ones and trying to force everybody that you got to be a Hebrew Israelite. So I appreciate my man right there. That was some good stuff. That was some good stuff. But look, so we got to go. It's lunchtime. It's 3:30. I've been doing 3 hours and 30 minutes. I'll get you tomorrow, Miss Fifi. But Miss Fifi, I'm gonna need you to come a little earlier, right? You need to come a little earlier, Miss Fifi. I've been noticing you've been late, Miss Fifi, over there. So, because I see when you come home. Just want to remind everybody, we are having our meetup here in San Antonio, October 31st through November 2nd. All are invited. All are invited. The agenda for when we do meet up, though, and you don't have to participate in anything you don't want to participate in. You know, do you. But October 31st, we're going to meet at the Devil's Rivers Distillery. But first, go to the link in the Facebook or YouTube description of this video, and you'll see the link for the hotel by which you're going to have a free breakfast and a free supper with your reservation there. You can reserve it, and you ain't got to pay for it until you get there. So October 31st, we're going to meet at 8 p.m. at Devil's River Distillery out in the patio. You don't have to buy anything. Voodoo Donuts is across the street. I like saying that. Then that Saturday morning, we're going to have a biz and money talk because I believe that we got to get our money right. And not that you're giving me money. It is we're going to talk about how you can build, whether you're in your career or you want to add income, how you can add income, working, doing social media, building brick and mortars, because I've done all of that. And we're going to talk about those things and just how do you budget your money and stuff like that. Matter of fact, for those people who come to the biz talk, I'm going to give you access to the financial seminar that I did a few months back. I'm going to give you access to that financial seminar, and I'm going to give you and I'm going to give you the budget that I use online, that a budget program that I use for my 70-10-10-10, and the booklet on how to fix your credit, the digital booklet fixing your credit. I'm going to give you, if you show up here and you are at the Biz Money Talk, I'm going to take your information to make sure you have access to that whole seminar and all the extras that people got who was at that seminar, who came into that webinar. So I want you, because we got to get our money right. You got to become more financially successful, you know. Then at 2 p.m. we're going to meet at the Japanese Tea Garden. It's a free space. They do have a restaurant up there, so if you do get hungry again or want something to drink, they do have something that you can buy, but it's free. It's no charge to get in there. But at the Japanese Tea Garden at 2 p.m. we're going to have a deconstruction Q&A, and then I can't see it because the thing is in the way. At 8 p.m. we're going to meet back again poolside at the Drury Plaza downtown San Antonio, where we're going to talk about how we move forward in developing and connecting with one another, because I meant to ask Drawn from Water, I'll ask him next time, like, I really want to know how his family, how his church, and how people reacted to him once he separated. We need, a lot of people lose family and want to be able to reconnect, and family ain't blood, family is how people treat you. And then Sunday, if you want to, we'll be doing a sound bowl meditation, poolside, 7 a.m. And then the rest of the day will be based on how many people are still there and what time everybody else will leave and what time my Falcons play. What time my Falcons play and my wife's Pittsburgh Steelers play. I can tell you, we're going to go watch the game on Sunday. I don't give a damn who they are. We're going to watch the game on Sunday. But I'll be making some more videos lunch. And so I appreciate you guys. Please share those videos. Thank you for being here. And on one of the videos that I'm making later on today, Ms. Fifi, I am definitely talking about the fact of the violence of those children in Colorado at that school. Because, and even for those of you who are on here and you're not going to see that video because for whatever reason, I want you to have one thing in your mind. There's a reason why you're not hearing anything about those children being shot in Colorado. Because if they focused on that and you just watched what happens when a bullet hits a man, your mind can't help but connect how that bullet hit that man is how those bullets hit those children in Colorado. Replace a grown-ass man being shot with the 3 children that was shot. If that doesn't just blows your mind away, because oftentimes when these things happen that are far away from us, we can't fully conceptualize it. But they can't let you know too much and focus too much on that. They can't go that story to the next story because of that. So I want y'all to think about that. And that's what I'm gonna talk about on this on video later. Oh, the car show is that Sunday. Sorry. All right, my wife just told me that there's a car show that we was talking about going to, and it's on that Sunday. So I appreciate everybody. I see you on the next live will be Monday, 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. We do lives every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, 12 noon until about this time frame. So y'all have a great day. Have a great weekend. And always remember, you have to free yourself to be yourself because your greatness is non-negotiable. Non-negotiable. Good journey, good vibrations. And thank everybody for supporting the channel in all the different ways you support it.